Some nights you do not fall asleep because you are peaceful. You fall asleep because you are exhausted from carrying too much. Your body lies down, but your mind stays awake. The room becomes quiet, but inside you, old worries begin to rise. The regret you pushed away, the fear you tried to hide, the memory you thought no longer had power over you. The pain you carried through the day suddenly becomes louder in the dark. Maybe you have spent years telling yourself to be strong, to keep going, to stay calm, to act like nothing hurts, to smile when your heart is tired. But real strength is not pretending the weight is not there. Real strength is learning how to put it down. Because sometimes the soul does not need another reason to endure. Sometimes it needs permission to rest. The Stoics understood that peace does not come from controlling everything around you. Peace begins when you stop letting every thought control you. It begins when you can look at worry without becoming worry. When you can feel pain without becoming pain. When you can remember the past without letting it own the night. Freedom is not the absence of problems. Freedom is the moment your mind stops bowing to every fear that enters it. Tonight, you are not here to fight your thoughts. You are not here to force yourself to forget. You are here to release what has been sitting too heavily in your spirit. Slowly, quietly, gently, one breath at a time, one burden at a time, one old wound at a time, because the same mind that enters the night heavy can meet the morning lighter. The same heart that lies down tired can rise again with space, calm, and strength. For the next 4 hours, let this be your place of stillness, a place where the mind unclenches, a place where the past becomes less powerful, a place where tomorrow no longer needs to be feared before it arrives. Tonight, you do not need to solve your whole life. You only need to stop carrying what this night was never meant to hold. Fall asleep heavy and wake up free. And as you let the night become quiet around you, notice this simple truth. Not every weight inside you is a duty. Not every heavy thought is a responsibility. Sometimes what feels like a burden is only an old judgment that never found a place to rest. There are nights when the heart feels full, but not with peace, full of questions, full of blame, full of quiet sentences you never said aloud. You lie down, but something inside you keeps asking, did I do enough? Did I choose right? Should I have known better? And without realizing it, you begin carrying a courtroom into your sleep. The mind does this in a very subtle way. It takes a past action, a missed chance, a painful conversation, or a season of life you wish had gone differently, and it turns it into evidence against you. It does not simply remember what happened. It judges you for it. It does not only say, that was hard. It says, you should have been stronger. It does not only say, that hurt. It says, you should have stopped it. And slowly, the weight becomes heavier than the event itself. This is why many people fall asleep tired, but wake up still feeling trapped. Their body rested, but their mind spent the whole night defending itself. They were not carrying real responsibility. They were carrying unfinished judgment. Responsibility is clear. Responsibility says, this part belongs to me, and I can learn from it. Judgment is different. Judgment says, because this happened, something is wrong with me. Responsibility helps you grow. Judgment keeps you stuck. Responsibility gives you a next step. Judgment keeps you circling the same old place. Responsibility is a teacher. Judgment is a prison. The Stoics understood this difference deeply. They did not believe peace came from pretending life was easy. They believed peace came from seeing clearly. And one of the clearest things you can ever learn is this. You are only responsible for what is within your control. Your choices, your response, your honesty, your effort, your character. But you are not responsible for every outcome. You are not responsible for how everyone reacted. You are not responsible for knowing yesterday what time only taught you later. Think about how often the mind punishes itself for not having wisdom before the lesson arrived. You look back and say, I should have seen it. But maybe you could not see it because you were living with the understanding you had at that time. You say, I should have left sooner. But maybe you were still hoping, still learning, still afraid, still trying to make sense of what your heart was not ready to release. You say, I should have spoken differently. But maybe you were tired, confused, wounded, or doing the best you could with the strength you had left. This does not mean every choice was perfect. It means your past must be examined with truth, not cruelty. There is a difference between learning from your life and attacking yourself with it. There is a difference between honest reflection and emotional punishment. One gives you wisdom, the other only steals your rest. At night, the mind often loses balance. A small thought becomes a mountain, a memory becomes a sentence, a mistake becomes an identity. You do not simply remember a moment, you become it again. You feel the shame, the regret, the fear, the pressure, as if the past has returned and is asking you to stand trial. But the past is not asking for punishment, it is asking for understanding. This is where freedom begins, not by denying what happened, not by pretending you have no regrets, not by forcing yourself to feel peaceful when you do not. Freedom begins when you say, I can learn from this without carrying it like a chain. Because unfinished judgment always demands one more night from you. It says, think about it again, replay it again, blame yourself again, find the perfect answer again. But peace says, enough for tonight. Peace says, you have suffered from this thought already. Peace says, wisdom can remain, but the punishment can end. Many people confuse heaviness with care. They think if they stop worrying, it means they do not care. They think if they stop blaming themselves, it means they have learned nothing. They think if they sleep peacefully, it means they have abandoned responsibility. But this is not true. You can care without carrying torment. You can learn without hating yourself. You can take responsibility without turning your soul into a place of endless punishment. The Stoic mind does not ask, how can I control everything? It asks, what is mine to carry and what must I release? This question is simple, but it can change the way you sleep. Because many burdens become lighter the moment you name them correctly. Some things are lessons. Some things are losses. Some things are consequences. Some things are memories. Some things are other people's choices. Some things are seasons that ended. But not everything is your responsibility. Maybe tonight, part of your heaviness comes from trying to carry someone else's reaction. Someone was disappointed, and you turned it into proof that you failed. Someone misunderstood you, and you turned it into proof that you were not enough. Someone left, changed, betrayed, judged, or ignored you, and somewhere inside, you began asking what you could have done to prevent it. But another person's heart is not fully in your hands. Their choices are not yours to control. Their inability to see you clearly does not mean you must spend every night explaining yourself to the dark. There is also the judgment of wasted time. This one is quiet but painful. The mind says, look how much time you lost. Look how long you stayed. Look how late you are. But time is not healed by hating the years already spent. Time is healed by returning to the present with clearer eyes. The person who wakes up free is not the person who had a perfect past. It is the person who finally stops using the past as a weapon against the present. Tonight, let this thought settle gently in you. Guilt is only useful when it guides you back to your values. After that, it becomes a burden. Regret is only useful when it teaches you what matters. After that, it becomes a shadow. Reflection is only useful when it brings wisdom. After that, it becomes a loop. So ask yourself softly, not with pressure, but with honesty. Is this thought helping me become better, or is it only making me feel smaller? If it is helping, take the lesson. If it is only hurting, release the judgment. You do not need to keep drinking from the same bitter cup to prove you understand the pain. This night is not asking you to solve your entire life. It is only asking you to stop carrying what no longer teaches you. The lesson can stay. The self-attack can leave. The wisdom can stay. The shame can leave. The responsibility can stay. The endless judgment can leave. And as your body softens into the quiet, remember this. You are allowed to end the day without condemning yourself. You are allowed to be unfinished and still worthy of rest. You are allowed to have made mistakes and still meet the morning with dignity. You are allowed to say, I will learn, but I will not keep punishing myself. Because the weight you carry at night is not always life asking for more from you. Sometimes it is only an old inner voice asking for one more chance to judge you. And tonight, with the calm strength of a Stoic heart, you can answer differently. You can say, I have heard you. I have learned what I can, but I will not give you my sleep. And in that quiet refusal, something inside you begins to loosen. The night becomes less like a burden and more like a doorway. The mind stops fighting its own history. The heart stops standing trial. And little by little, the heaviness you brought into the dark begins to lose its hold. You fall asleep not because everything is fixed, but because not everything needs to be fixed tonight. You rest not because the past was perfect, but because you no longer belong to its judgment. And when morning comes, you may not wake up with every answer, but you can wake up with something better. A little more space inside, a little more mercy toward yourself, a little more freedom, and after the mind learns that not every heavy thought is a true responsibility, the next step is even deeper, because it is one thing to understand the burden. It is another thing to put it down before sleep. The night does not ask you to carry every pain into the pillow. It asks you to enter quietly, lighter than you were before. There is a strange pain in being tired, but still unable to rest. Your eyes are ready to close. Your body is ready to surrender, but something inside you keeps holding on. A conversation, a disappointment, a fear, a name, a memory, a responsibility that has followed you from morning into midnight. And the hardest part is this. Sometimes you do not even know what you are carrying until the world becomes silent enough for you to feel its weight. This is why the Stoic art of sleep is not only about closing the eyes, it is about closing the day. It is about knowing when the work of thinking has ended. It is about telling the mind, you have done enough for now. Because a tired mind without direction will keep reaching for problems. It will search through the past, scan the future, and pull unfinished emotions into the present. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it thinks holding everything will keep you safe. But holding everything does not always protect you. Sometimes it slowly removes your peace. The Stoics believed that the mind must be trained, not obeyed blindly. They understood that thoughts are not masters, they are visitors. Some arrive with wisdom, some arrive with fear, some arrive with old pain dressed as truth. And before sleep, you must learn the quiet discipline of choosing which thoughts are allowed to stay beside you. This is not denial. This is not running away. This is not pretending life has no problems. It is simply refusing to turn your bed into a storage room for every emotional burden you collected during the day. Before the body enters sleep, the heart needs a form of release. Not a dramatic release, not a perfect release, a simple one, the kind that begins when you stop arguing with what cannot be changed tonight. You may not be able to fix the situation now. You may not be able to correct the misunderstanding now. You may not be able to receive the apology now. You may not be able to know what tomorrow will bring. But you can decide that tonight will not be sacrificed to what your hands cannot touch. There is wisdom in saying, "This can wait." Not because it is unimportant, but because you are human. And being human means you need rest before you can carry anything well. A tired soul often mistakes pressure for purpose. It believes that if it stops worrying, something will fall apart. But many things have already been held long enough. Some burdens do not need more attention tonight. They need distance. They need silence. They need to be placed outside the doorway of sleep. The Stoic way begins with sorting. You gently ask, what belongs to this moment? Not what belongs to tomorrow. Not what belongs to 10 years ago. Not what belongs to someone else's opinion. This moment, this breath, this dark room, this tired body, this quiet chance to return to yourself. Most emotional burdens become heavy because they are mixed together. Regret gets mixed with responsibility. Fear gets mixed with planning. Love gets mixed with control. Concern gets mixed with guilt. And before long, the mind is carrying one large weight that feels impossible to put down. But when you separate it, it becomes clearer. There is what happened. There is what you felt. There is what you learned. There is what you can do. There is what you cannot do. There is what belongs to another person. There is what belongs to time. There is what belongs to God, fate, life, or the natural order of things. Peace begins when you stop carrying all of these as one burden. Before sleep, you are allowed to place each thing where it belongs. The mistake can become a lesson. The worry can become a note for tomorrow. The pain can become a feeling you breathe through, not a prison you sleep inside. The person who hurt you can become someone outside your inner room. The future can return to the future. The past can return to the past. And your body can return to rest. This is a quiet art. It is not loud. It does not need anyone to see it. No one may know the battle you are ending inside yourself tonight. No one may clap because you chose peace over replaying the same wound. No one may praise you for not following that painful thought down another dark road. But the body will know, the nervous system will know, the heart will know, sleep will know. Many people wait for life to become calm before they allow themselves to rest. But Stoicism teaches a stronger path. You learn to create calm inside yourself even while life remains unfinished. You do not need every question answered before you breathe. You do not need every relationship repaired before you close your eyes. You do not need every fear removed before you allow the night to hold you. You only need to stop giving every burden permission to enter your sleep. This matters because sleep is not just physical recovery. It is the soul's daily return to balance. If you carry anger into sleep, the body rests under pressure. If you carry shame into sleep, the mind dreams inside a cage. If you carry fear into sleep, morning begins with yesterday's tension still alive in you. But when you practice release, even gently, you teach your whole being that the night is not a battlefield. It is a shelter. Putting down emotional burdens does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop confusing care with suffering. You can love someone and still rest. You can face a problem and still sleep. You can be responsible and still refuse to punish yourself through the night. A calm mind is not a careless mind. A calm mind is a disciplined mind. It knows that tomorrow's strength is born from tonight's surrender. The Stoic does not say, "Nothing matters." The Stoic says, "I must know what matters now." And right now, what matters is not solving every pain. What matters is returning to the part of you that can meet life with steadiness again. Because when you are exhausted, even small problems look like mountains. But when you are rested, the same problems become clearer, smaller, more manageable. This is why you must not carry the entire weight of life into the last minutes before sleep. Those minutes are sacred. They shape the doorway between who you were today and who you may become tomorrow. If you enter that doorway with every burden in your arms, you may wake up feeling as if you never left the struggle. But if you place even one burden down, something begins to change. A little space opens, a little softness returns, a little freedom becomes possible. So tonight, before your body fully enters sleep, speak quietly within yourself. Say, "This pain does not need my attention right now." Say, "This fear can wait outside until morning." Say, "This mistake has taught me enough for today." Say, "This person's judgment is not allowed to sleep in my heart." Say, "I release what is not mine to carry in the dark." And then breathe as if you believe it, even if only a small part of you does. Let the breath become the hand that sets the burden down. Let the silence become the room where nothing has to be fixed. Let the night become the teacher that says, "You are allowed to stop." Because the art of putting down emotional burdens is not learned all at once. It is practiced night after night, thought after thought, breath after breath. Each time you release one weight before sleep, you teach your mind a new path. You show it that peace is not found by holding tighter. Peace is found by knowing when to let go. And as the body softens, as the day loosens its grip, as the mind stops reaching for every unfinished thing, you begin to understand something simple but powerful. Rest is not weakness. Rest is wisdom. Rest is self-command. Rest is the quiet courage to say, "I will not carry into sleep what sleep was meant to heal." Tonight, you do not need to enter the night as a warrior still holding every weapon. You can enter it as a soul laying down what no longer belongs in your hands. You can put down the fear. You can put down the blame. You can put down the pressure. You can put down the old ache that has followed you long enough. And when the body finally enters sleep, it does not have to drag the whole world with it. It can enter lighter, softer, freer. Not because life has become perfect, but because you have chosen not to carry the entire weight of life into the place where your spirit is meant to rest. And once you have learned to put down the burdens that do not belong in your sleep, another truth begins to rise quietly. Some of the heaviest things you carry are heavy because your mind is trying to control what was never in your hands. The mind becomes tired, not only from pain, but from wrestling with things it cannot move. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from the body. It comes from trying to hold life too tightly. You lie down at night, but your thoughts are still reaching into tomorrow, reaching into other people's minds, reaching into decisions that have not been made, reaching into outcomes that have not arrived. And the more the mind reaches, the heavier it becomes, not because you are failing, but because you are trying to carry what no human being was built to carry. This is where many people lose their peace. They do not only think about life. They try to control it from the inside of their head. They try to control how someone feels. They try to control whether people understand them. They try to control what tomorrow will bring. They try to control whether the past will stop hurting. They try to control every possible danger before it appears. And because the mind cannot control these things, it begins to tighten. It begins to panic. It begins to repeat the same thoughts, hoping that repetition will become power. But repetition is not control. Worry is not control. Overthinking is not control. It only gives the mind the feeling that something is being done, while the heart becomes more tired. The Stoics understood this clearly. They believed that peace begins with one simple separation: what is in your power and what is not in your power. This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest lessons for a tired soul to accept. Because the mind wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants life to promise that nothing will go wrong. It wants people to behave with fairness. It wants the future to arrive gently. It wants every pain to explain itself. But life does not always give such promises. So the Stoic does not build peace on promises. The Stoic builds peace on inner command. You may not control what tomorrow brings, but you can control the kind of person who meets tomorrow. You may not control someone's opinion, but you can control whether you betray yourself trying to change it. You may not control the result of your effort, but you can control the honesty of the effort itself. You may not control how quickly healing comes, but you can control whether you keep reopening what is trying to close. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. A person who knows what is outside their power is not giving up. They are finally becoming free from a battle that never had an ending. At night, the mind often becomes heaviest because it forgets this separation. It takes everything personally. It treats every unknown as a threat. It treats every silence as rejection. It treats every delay as disaster. It treats every mistake as a sign that life is falling apart. Then it tries to fix all of it before sleep. But the night was not made for controlling the universe. The night was made for returning to yourself. There is a quiet mercy in admitting, this is not mine to control. Not because you do not care, not because it does not matter, but because your soul needs truth more than it needs pressure. Some things can only be influenced, not controlled. Some things can only be accepted, not forced. Some things can only be waited through, not solved at midnight. You can send the message, but you cannot control how it is received. You can speak with honesty, but you cannot control whether someone understands. You can love deeply, but you cannot control whether someone values that love. You can prepare for tomorrow, but you cannot control every part of tomorrow. You can change your behavior, but you cannot rewrite another person's heart. When the mind refuses to accept this, it becomes a prisoner of impossible tasks. It keeps asking, how do I make them see? How do I make sure nothing goes wrong? How do I stop the future from hurting me? How do I make the past feel different? And each question becomes another stone placed on the chest. But there is another way, a calmer way, a wiser way. Instead of asking, how do I control this? You begin to ask, what is mine to do with dignity? That question changes everything. It brings you back from the endless world outside you into the steady world within you. If someone misunderstands you, what is yours? To speak truthfully if the moment allows, to stay respectful, to refuse bitterness, to stop begging for permission to be at peace. If tomorrow is uncertain, what is yours? To prepare where you can, to rest where you must, to meet the next day with a mind that has not been destroyed by fear before the day even begins. If the past still hurts, what is yours? To learn, to soften, to stop using memory as a weapon, to let wisdom remain without keeping the wound open. If someone leaves, changes, or disappoints you, what is yours? To grieve honestly, to keep your character, to not become cruel because pain visited you, to release the belief that your worth depends on whether another person stayed. This is the kind of control the Stoics respected. Not control over life, but control over the self. Not control over every event, but control over your response to the event. Not control over fate, but control over whether fate turns you into someone you no longer recognize. The mind feels heaviest when it tries to do the work of fate, time, and other people all at once. It becomes like a person standing in the rain, trying to command the clouds to stop. But the clouds are not listening. The rain falls as it falls. The wise person does not waste the whole night shouting at the sky. The wise person finds shelter, protects what can be protected, and waits for the storm to pass. This is not passivity. It is clear action. It is the difference between doing what can be done and suffering over what cannot be done. Many people think surrender means losing power, but true surrender often gives power back. Because when you stop pouring energy into what you cannot control, that energy returns to what you can control. Your breath, your choices, your words, your values, your rest, your next small step. And tonight, that small step may simply be this. Stop trying to control the whole story before you sleep. You do not need to know how everything will end before you close your eyes. You do not need to understand every person's mind. You do not need to predict every outcome. You do not need to hold the future still so you can feel safe. Safety does not come from controlling everything. Safety begins when you learn that even if life changes, you can remain rooted inside yourself. The Stoic heart says, "Let me not lose myself trying to control what was never mine." That is a powerful prayer. That is a powerful discipline. Because many people lose years trying to manage things that were never truly in their hands. They manage appearances. They manage reactions. They manage imagined disasters. They manage old pain. And all the while, they forget to manage the one place where freedom actually begins, their own mind. So as night deepens, begin to loosen your grip, not on your values, not on your responsibilities, not on the things that truly require your care. Loosen your grip on the illusion that you must control everything to be safe. Loosen your grip on the belief that worry is the same as love. Loosen your grip on the fear that if you stop thinking about it, everything will collapse. Some things will unfold without your permission. Some answers will arrive when they arrive. Some people will understand you only as deeply as they are able. Some doors will close. Some seasons will change. Some plans will bend. And still, your peace does not have to disappear with every movement of life. Tonight, give the mind a boundary. Tell it, "This is outside my power, and I will not spend my sleep pretending otherwise." Tell it, "I have done what I can for today." Tell it, "The future is not asking me to suffer before it arrives." Tell it, "Other people's hearts are not mine to command." Tell it, "I return now to what is mine." And what is yours tonight? Your breath is yours. Your attention is yours. Your response is yours. Your character is yours. Your decision to rest is yours. Let that be enough. Because the mind becomes light, not when life becomes fully controllable, but when you stop demanding control as the price of peace. You fall asleep heavy when you try to hold the whole world in your hands. You wake up free when you remember that you were only meant to hold your own soul with wisdom. So release the impossible task. Let the uncontrollable return to life. Let tomorrow carry tomorrow. Let people carry themselves. Let the past remain where it belongs, and let your spirit come back home to the quiet power it still has. You may not control the night. You may not control the morning. You may not control every road ahead, but you can control this gentle surrender. You can stop fighting what is not yours. You can rest inside what remains, and what remains is enough for tonight. And after the mind begins to see what is outside its power, another hidden habit becomes easier to notice, because many nights are not ruined by what is happening now. They are ruined by a trial that keeps happening inside you. The room is quiet, the body is still, but the mind takes an old mistake, places it before the judge, and asks you to suffer for it again. There are few places more painful than a pillow that has become a courtroom. You lie down to rest, but your thoughts begin calling witnesses from the past. A word you should not have said, a chance you did not take, a person you trusted too long, a moment you wish you could redo, a decision that still follows you like a shadow, and suddenly Sleep is no longer a place of peace. It becomes the place where your mind puts you on trial. This is one of the quietest forms of suffering. No one sees it. No one hears the arguments. No one knows how many times you have defended yourself in the darkness. During the day, you may look normal. You may work, smile, answer messages, handle responsibilities, and speak like everything is fine. But when night comes, the inner judge wakes up. And this judge does not ask fair questions. It does not ask what you knew then. It does not ask what you were going through. It does not ask how tired, afraid, young, wounded, pressured, or confused you were. It simply points at the past and says, guilty. But the Stoic mind must learn to interrupt that trial, not with excuses, not with denial, not with pretending the mistake never happened, but with justice, true justice, because it is not justice to punish yourself forever for something that was already lived, already felt, already learned from. It is not wisdom to keep reopening the same old case every night and call it growth. Growth has a purpose. Punishment only repeats pain. There is a difference between accountability and self-condemnation. Accountability says, I see what happened. I accept what was mine. I will do better. Self-condemnation says, because I failed, I am the failure. Accountability leaves you with direction. Self-condemnation leaves you with heaviness. Accountability brings you back to your values. Self-condemnation drags you away from your peace. Many people do not know this difference, so they mistake mental attack for maturity. They believe that if they keep blaming themselves, it means they are responsible. They believe that if they stop suffering over the mistake, it means they did not care. But endless suffering does not prove that you care. It only proves that the mind has not learned how to close the case. The Stoics did not teach people to be careless with their actions. They taught people to live with discipline, honesty, and self-command. But they also understood that once a mistake has given its lesson, keeping the wound open is no longer wisdom. It is attachment. Attachment to guilt. Attachment to shame. Attachment to a version of yourself that no longer exists in the same way. Think of the old mistake that visits you at night. Notice how it speaks. It rarely says, let us learn calmly. It usually says, let us suffer again. It brings the same scene, the same regret, the same ache, but it offers no new wisdom. That is how you know it is no longer reflection. It has become a loop. Reflection has movement. It leads somewhere. A loop has no road. It only circles. Reflection makes you wiser. A loop makes you smaller. Reflection says, what can I understand? A loop says, how can I hurt myself with this again? This is why you must stop turning your pillow into a courtroom. A courtroom is a place of judgment, evidence, defense, accusation, and sentence. But your pillow was not made for that. Your pillow was made for surrender, for breathing, for returning, for letting the body and mind enter a softer state. When you drag old mistakes there every night, you teach your nervous system that rest is not safe. You teach your heart that silence means punishment. You teach your mind that sleep is the time to reopen every sealed door. But tonight can be different. Tonight, when the old mistake rises, do not argue with it the same way. Do not follow it into the full story again. Do not let it call every witness. Do not let it turn one memory into your whole identity. Meet it with calm authority. Say within yourself, I know this moment. I have visited it many times. I have taken what it came to teach. I do not need to stand trial again tonight. That sentence may feel small, but it is powerful, because you are not trying to erase the past. You are changing your relationship with it. The past can be a teacher without being a judge. It can be a warning without being a prison. It can be part of your story, without being the place where your soul sleeps every night. Some mistakes hurt more because they touched someone else. Maybe you disappointed a person. Maybe you failed to show up in the way you wish you had. Maybe your words carried more sharpness than you intended. Maybe you were silent when you should have spoken, or spoke when silence would have been wiser. These memories can be heavy because they involve love, trust, and the pain of knowing that your actions mattered. But even here, endless self-punishment does not repair what happened. If there is something to correct, correct it where possible. If there is an apology to give it with humility if the door is open. If there is behavior to change it in the present. But do not confuse punishing yourself at midnight with making things right. Pain that produces no repair, no wisdom, and no transformation is not responsibility. It is only suffering wearing the clothing of responsibility. The Stoic path asks for something deeper than regret. It asks for character. Regret looks backward and says, "I hate that I did that." Character looks forward and says, "Because I understand now, I will become different." Regret alone can keep you trapped. Character gives the pain a direction. This is how the courtroom closes. Not by saying, "It did not matter," but by saying, "It mattered enough for me to change. And because I am changing, I do not need to keep bleeding in the same place." There are also mistakes that were not fully mistakes. They were choices made from limited knowledge, decisions made in survival mode, reactions from a nervous system that was overwhelmed, trust given before you knew what betrayal looked like, love offered before you understood boundaries, staying too long because leaving felt impossible, saying yes because you had not yet learned how to protect your no. When the mind judges these things years later, it often forgets the person you were then. It judges the younger version of you with the knowledge you have now. But that is not fair. It is like blaming a child for not reading a map they had never been given. Yes, you can learn. Yes, you can grow. Yes, you can wish things had been different. But you must also bring mercy to the version of you who did not yet know how to survive differently. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is accurate memory. It remembers the full truth, not just the painful part. It remembers your fear. It remembers your loneliness. It remembers the pressure. It remembers the hope. It remembers the lack of guidance. It remembers that you were still becoming. And when memory becomes honest, judgment begins to soften. Before sleep, practice closing the court. See the thought arrive, but do not let it take the judge's seat. Let wisdom speak instead. Wisdom says, "What did this teach me?" Wisdom says, "What value do I want to live by now?" Wisdom says, "What can I do tomorrow that honors the lesson without repeating the punishment?" These questions are gentle, but they restore your power. They move you from shame to responsibility, from regret to direction, from trial to transformation. And then, when the mind tries to bring the mistake back again, you can answer with calm firmness. The lesson has been received. The sentence is over. This is not something the mind may accept immediately. Old habits often return. The inner judge may still try to speak. But each time you refuse to reopen the trial, you teach your mind a new law. You teach it that night is not for self-condemnation. You teach it that peace is allowed after learning. You teach it that rest does not have to wait until you become perfect. Because you will never be a person with no past. You will never be a person who made every choice correctly. You will never be someone who understood everything before life taught it. But you can become someone who no longer uses the night to punish the person you used to be. And that is freedom. To lie down and not be dragged back into every old mistake. To close your eyes and not become the accused. To remember what happened without becoming trapped inside it. to let the lesson remain while the shame leaves the room. Tonight, your pillow does not need to be a courtroom. It can become a place of release, a place where the old case is closed, a place where the soul is no longer forced to defend itself against yesterday, a place where the tired heart hears a quieter verdict. You learned. You are changing. You are allowed to rest. And after you stop putting yourself on trial for old mistakes, another door begins to open. A quieter door, a harder door. Because even when the trial ends, the heart may still reach backward, asking life to change what has already happened. It may whisper, if only it had gone differently. But freedom does not begin when the past becomes different. Freedom begins when you stop demanding that it must. There is a deep kind of heaviness that comes from arguing with what cannot return to your hands. It is not always loud. Sometimes it hides behind normal thoughts. You remember a person, a choice, a lost season, a missed chance, a painful ending, and something inside you still tries to negotiate with time. You want a different sentence, a different moment, a different version of yourself, a different goodbye, a different childhood, a different answer, a different ending. And because the past does not answer, the mind keeps suffering. This is one of the most painful traps of the human heart. Not pain itself, but the belief that peace can only come if yesterday changes. You tell yourself, I will be free when I understand why it happened. I will be free when they apologize. I will be free when I stop feeling hurt. I will be free when I can prove I deserved better. I will be free when the memory no longer touches me. But the past does not become softer because you demand from it. It becomes softer when you stop making your peace depend on what it can no longer give. The Stoics understood that much of human suffering comes from wanting reality to be other than it is. They did not say this because they were cold. They said it because they understood the mind. A mind that fights reality becomes tired. A mind that demands a different past becomes trapped. It keeps walking to a locked door, hoping grief will become a key. But grief cannot unlock yesterday. Regret cannot rewrite it. Anger cannot rebuild it. Shame cannot repair it. Overthinking cannot reach back and rearrange what already happened. There comes a moment when the soul must stop knocking, not because what happened was fair, not because it did not matter, not because you are pretending it was okay, but because your life is still here and it needs you now. This is where freedom begins, not in denial, but in surrender. And surrender does not mean approval. This is important. Many people fear acceptance because they think it means saying, what happened was fine. But acceptance does not mean that. Acceptance means, this happened, and I will stop destroying my present, trying to force it not to have happened. That sentence may be one of the strongest sentences a person can ever live by. Because there are things you may never fully understand. There are people who may never explain themselves. There are years that may never return. There are versions of you that cannot be rescued from the choices they made. There are moments that will always carry some sadness when they pass through your memory. But sadness does not have to become a life sentence. Pain does not have to become your permanent address. You can carry the truth without carrying the argument. The argument is what makes it heavy. The truth says, it happened. The argument says, it should not have happened. The truth says, I was hurt. The argument says, I cannot rest until the hurt is undone. The truth says, I lost something. The argument says, I cannot live fully unless it returns. The truth brings clarity. The argument keeps the wound open. At night, this argument becomes louder because there is nothing to distract you. The day may keep your hands busy, but the night brings the heart back to its unfinished places. And if you are not careful, Your mind will use the quiet as an invitation to reopen the past. It will bring back the face, the voice, the room, the decision, the silence, the last message, the missed opportunity. It will say, "Let us try again to make this different." But you cannot sleep peacefully while negotiating with a closed chapter. The Stoic path invites you to ask a different question. Not, "How do I change what happened?" but, "How do I meet what happened with dignity now?" That question returns power to you, because the past may hold the event, but the present holds your response. The past may contain the wound, but the present can contain the healing. The past may explain part of your pain, but it does not have the right to own every morning you still have left. Maybe you wish you had loved yourself sooner. Maybe you wish you had walked away earlier. Maybe you wish you had spoken when silence cost you too much. Maybe you wish you had been more careful with someone who mattered. Maybe you wish someone had protected you, chosen you, believed you, or stayed. These wishes are human. They are not wrong. They show that something in you knows the value of what was lost. But wishes become chains when they demand the impossible. You can honor what you wish had happened without spending your life waiting for it to happen backward. You can say, "I wish it had been different," and still choose to live. You can say, "That hurt me," and still choose to breathe. You can say, "I deserved better," and still stop returning to the moment that failed to give it to you. Freedom is not forgetting. Freedom is no longer needing the past to become gentle before you become peaceful. This is hard because the mind often believes that letting go means letting the past win. It says, "If I stop being angry, they get away with it. If I stop regretting, it means I do not care. If I stop replaying it, it means the pain was not serious." But that is not true. Letting go does not erase the truth. It simply removes the past from the center of your life. You are not freeing the event. You are freeing yourself. You are not saying it did not matter. You are saying it will not control the whole story. The Stoics believed that time should teach us how to live more wisely, not trap us in endless resistance. What happened can become part of your wisdom. It can sharpen your values. It can make you more honest, more careful, more compassionate, more awake. But it cannot do that if you keep using it only as a place to suffer. Pain that is accepted can become wisdom. Pain that is resisted forever becomes a room with no door. Tonight, you do not need to force yourself to be fully healed. That would be another kind of pressure. You do not need to pretend the memory has no weight. You only need to stop asking it to be a different memory. Let it be what it is, a chapter, a scar, a lesson, a loss, a reminder, but not a command, not a chain, not a reason to keep abandoning the present. Say quietly within yourself, "I release the demand for a different past," not the lesson, not the truth, not the wisdom, only the demand. Because that demand has taken too much from you. It has taken sleep. It has taken softness. It has taken attention from the life still waiting in front of you. It has made the night feel like a place where yesterday keeps asking for one more sacrifice. But tonight, you can stop sacrificing. You can let the past remain past. You can let the unanswered questions remain unanswered for now. You can let what was lost be honored without being worshipped. You can let the younger version of you rest from the impossible task of getting everything right. You can let life be imperfect and still continue. This is not easy, but it is freeing. Because the moment you stop demanding a different past, your energy begins to return to the present. Your breath comes back. Your body softens. Your mind no longer has to hold time by the throat. You are no longer standing at the edge of yesterday, begging it to open. You are turning slowly toward what is still here. And what is still here matters. Your next breath matters. Your next morning matters. Your next choice matters. Your ability to become kinder to yourself matters. Your peace matters. The past may have shaped you, but it does not have to keep ruling you. It may have wounded you, but it does not have to define the way you sleep forever. It may have taken something from you, but it does not get to take every quiet night that remains. So as you lie here, let this truth settle gently. Freedom begins when the argument ends. Not the memory, not the lesson, not the honesty, the argument, the endless inner demand that life should go back and change what it cannot change. Tonight, you do not have to win against the past. You only have to stop wrestling with it. Let yesterday be yesterday. Let the lesson stay. Let the demand leave. Let the body grow quiet. Let the mind unclench. Let the heart stop begging time to return what it has already carried away. And in that stillness, something inside you begins to open, not loudly, not all at once, but softly, like a door that has been locked for years, finally loosening in the dark. You are still here. You are still breathing. You are still becoming. And because you are still becoming, the past is not the final word. Freedom begins here. Not when yesterday changes, but when you no longer need it to change, before you allow yourself to live, rest, and wake up lighter. And after you stop demanding a different past, the silence becomes clearer. Because when the mind is no longer fighting yesterday so loudly, you begin to notice another mystery of the night. The world becomes quiet, but the thoughts become loud. The room is still, but inside you, something begins to speak with a voice you could ignore during the day. There is a strange moment that comes when the lights go off. You are no longer busy. You are no longer performing strength. You are no longer answering calls, solving problems, doing tasks, smiling for people, or moving from one duty to another. The world stops asking, and suddenly the mind starts revealing. This is why silence can feel peaceful for one person and heavy for another. It depends on what the silence finds waiting inside. Many people think their thoughts become louder at night because something is wrong with them. But often the truth is softer than that. Your thoughts become louder because for the first time all day, they have space. During the day, movement covers pain. Noise covers fear. Responsibility covers loneliness. Work covers regret. Conversation covers the questions you do not want to face. But when the world becomes quiet, all the things you pushed to the side begin looking for your attention. This does not mean you are broken. It means your mind has been carrying messages that were never heard. The Stoics understood that the mind does not become peaceful by being ignored. It becomes peaceful by being observed with wisdom. A thought that is pushed away without understanding often returns with more force. A fear that is never named becomes louder in the dark. A sadness that is never given room begins to speak when everything else goes silent. So the question is not, how do I stop every thought? The better question is, what are these thoughts trying to show me, and which ones deserve my obedience? Because not every loud thought is true. Some thoughts are only tired, some are afraid, some are old habits, some are memories trying to protect you from pain that already happened. Some are warnings that have become too sensitive. Some are unfinished emotions asking for kindness, not control. If you treat every thought as a command, you will suffer. But if you learn to see thoughts as visitors, you can listen without becoming owned. This is where the hidden reason appears. Your thoughts become louder when the world becomes quiet, because the mind is no longer distracted from itself. It has nothing else to hold, so it holds what is unfinished. It holds the conversation you did not fully process. It holds the fear you acted too strong to admit. It holds the grief you postponed. It holds the pressure you carried without naming it. It holds the truth you avoided because the day demanded function, not feeling. During the day, survival often looks like focus. You keep going because you have to. You tell yourself, not now. Not now, I have work. Not now, I have people depending on me. Not now, I have things to finish. Not now, I cannot fall apart. And sometimes that is necessary, but the mind remembers every not now. And at night, when nothing else is urgent, the mind returns and says, now. This is why the thoughts feel loud. They are not always new. They are often delayed. But the mistake many people make is that they panic when the thoughts arrive. They feel the first wave of worry and immediately believe something terrible is happening. They try to force the mind to be silent. They argue with the thoughts. They shame themselves for thinking. They say, why am I like this? Why can't I just sleep? Why does my mind always do this? And now, instead of one thought, there are many. The original worry becomes worry about worrying. The old sadness becomes shame about being sad. The tired mind becomes angry at itself for being tired. This is how the night becomes heavier than it needs to be. The Stoic way is different. The Stoic does not fear the appearance of a thought. The Stoic studies it, calmly, patiently, without bowing to it. A thought may say, tomorrow will go badly. The Stoic asks, is this certain, or is this fear speaking? A thought may say, you failed. The Stoic asks, is there a lesson here, or only punishment? A thought may say, they do not care about you. The Stoic asks, do I know this, or am I filling silence with pain? This gentle questioning weakens the power of loud thoughts, because it brings light into the room of the mind. Thoughts grow louder when they are treated like shadows in a dark house. But when you bring attention to them, not panic, they begin to lose their size. You see that a thought is not always a prophecy. A memory is not always a command. A fear is not always a fact. A feeling is not always a final truth. This is freedom, not the absence of thought, but the ability to remain steady while thought passes through you. There is also another reason thoughts become louder in silence. The body has slowed down, but the nervous system has not yet received the message. Your body may be lying still, but inside, you may still be running. You may have spent the whole day in pressure, tension, alertness, or emotional defense. Then, at night, you expect your inner world to become quiet in one moment. But a mind that has been bracing all day cannot always soften just because the lights are off. It needs a bridge. It needs a way down. That bridge is not force. It is permission. Permission to stop solving. Permission to stop reviewing. Permission to stop preparing for every possible pain. Permission to let the day be complete, even if it was imperfect. Permission to rest before every answer is found. When you give yourself this permission, the mind slowly learns that quiet does not mean danger. Quiet does not mean the past will attack. Quiet does not mean you must scan for problems. Quiet can become a safe place again, but it takes practice. Night after night, breath after breath. You teach your mind that silence is not an enemy. Silence is a room where the soul can finally set down what it has been carrying. Many people fill their lives with noise because they are afraid of what silence may reveal. But silence is not trying to hurt you. Silence is trying to return you to yourself. It shows you what still needs care. It shows you what you have outgrown. It shows you where your peace has been leaking. It shows you the thoughts that have been running your life quietly from the background. And if you meet those thoughts with wisdom, they can become teachers instead of tormentors. The problem is not that the mind speaks at night. The problem begins when you believe every voice inside you deserves the throne. Some thoughts need comfort, some need correction, some need release, some need to be written down tomorrow, not solved tonight. Some need to pass through without being followed. Some need only one sentence. I hear you, but I will not obey you. This is the quiet power of Stoic sleep. You are not trying to empty the mind like a room with no furniture. You are learning how to sit in the room without being controlled by everything inside it. A thought may come, but you do not have to chase it. A fear may rise, but you do not have to build a home around it. A memory may appear, but you do not have to lie down inside it. Tonight, when the world becomes quiet and your thoughts begin to grow loud, do not fear them immediately. Let them arrive. Let them show their face. Then gently ask, are you here to guide me, or are you here to frighten me? If there is guidance, keep the wisdom. If there is only fear, let it pass. You do not need to wrestle with every visitor at the door of your mind. The night is not asking you to silence every thought by force. It is asking you to stop becoming every thought that speaks. So when the room grows still and the old voices rise, remember this: the loudness of a thought does not measure its truth. Sometimes the loudest thought is only the most frightened one. Sometimes the strongest worry is only the oldest habit. Sometimes the pain that speaks in the dark is not asking you to suffer. It is asking you to finally meet it with calm. And as you breathe, you can answer the noise differently. Not with panic, not with shame, not with another battle, but with quiet command. You can say, I hear the thought, but I remain here. You can say, I feel the fear, but I do not become it. You can say, the world is quiet, and I am safe enough to rest. You can say, not every voice inside me is my master. And slowly, the thoughts that once sounded like thunder begin to sound like distant rain. Still there, perhaps, but no longer ruling the night, no longer dragging your spirit into every unfinished corner, no longer deciding whether you deserve rest, because silence does not create the heaviness, it reveals it. And what is revealed can be understood. What is understood can be softened. What is softened can finally begin to release. Tonight, let the quiet come. Let the thoughts rise without fear. Let wisdom sit above noise. Let your breath become stronger than every restless voice. The world may be quiet, and the mind may speak, but you do not have to follow every sound. You can listen, you can choose, you can release. And then, gently, you can sleep. And after you learn that silence does not create the heaviness, but reveals it, another deeper truth becomes ready to meet you. Because when thoughts become loud at night, many people do not only feel pain, they begin to punish themselves for feeling pain. They turn a normal wound into a personal failure. They suffer, and then they judge themselves for suffering. But the Stoic mind learns to separate these two things: the pain that visits you and the punishment you add to it. There is a tiredness that comes from being hurt, but there is another tiredness that comes from hating yourself for being hurt. That second tiredness is heavier. It is the voice that says, why am I still affected by this? Why can't I just move on? Why am I so weak? Why do I keep thinking about it? And suddenly, the original pain is no longer alone. Now shame has joined it, judgment has joined it, pressure has joined it, and what began as a wound becomes a burden you keep striking with your own thoughts. This is why the mind becomes exhausted. Not only because life was painful, but because the mind was trained to treat pain as something shameful. The Stoics did not teach that a wise person feels nothing. That is a misunderstanding. A Stoic is not a stone. A Stoic is not a person who walks through loss, disappointment, fear, and grief with an empty heart. The Stoic path is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. It teaches you to feel what is real, without adding a second layer of suffering that does not need to be there. Pain is the first arrow. Punishment is the second. Pain says, this hurt. Punishment says, I should not be hurting. Pain says, I lost something. Punishment says, I am foolish for caring. Pain says, that memory still touches me. Punishment says, something is wrong with me because I remember. Pain is human. Punishment is the mind turning against the human inside you. And when you enter sleep with both pain and punishment, the night becomes too heavy. The body may want rest, but the heart is being corrected, accused, and pressured inside. It is like trying to sleep while someone stands beside the bed saying, "You should be better than this by now." No soul can truly rest under that kind of voice. Stoicism teaches a tired mind to pause before believing that voice. It asks, is this pain a fact, or is this punishment an opinion? That question can change the whole night, because pain often begins with something real, a disappointment, a loss, a hard season, a mistake, a fear, a broken trust, a deep tiredness. But punishment is usually the story the mind adds after the pain arrives. Pain says, I feel lonely tonight. Punishment says, nobody will ever truly stay. Pain says, I am afraid of what comes next. Punishment says, I am not strong enough for life. Pain says, I wish I had done things differently. Punishment says, I ruin everything. Do you see the difference? One is a feeling, the other is a sentence. One needs care, the other creates a prison. The Stoic does not deny the first, the Stoic questions the second. This matters because many people think healing means they must remove pain completely. So when pain appears, they feel like they have failed. But healing is not proven by never hurting again. Healing is often proven by how gently you treat yourself when the hurt returns. It is possible for a memory to ache without becoming your master. It is possible for sadness to visit without taking your whole identity. It is possible for fear to rise without being treated as prophecy. The tired mind needs this freedom. It needs to know that a feeling can be allowed without being obeyed. A wound can be noticed without being worshipped. A hard moment can be held without being turned into self-hate. There are people who have carried punishment for so long that it feels normal. They believe they are being responsible when they attack themselves. They believe they are being wise when they deny their own tenderness. They believe they are becoming stronger by speaking to themselves with cruelty, but cruelty does not create strength. It creates tension. It creates inner fear. It makes the mind afraid of its own emotions. True strength has discipline, yes, but it also has fairness. And fairness means you do not beat yourself for having a human response to a human wound. If someone you loved was hurting, would you tell them, you are weak for feeling this? Would you tell them, you should be ashamed that this still affects you? Would you tell them, you do not deserve rest until you stop being sad? Most likely, you would not. You would speak with patience. You would remind them that pain takes time. You would tell them they are allowed to breathe. You would help them see the difference between what happened to them and who they are. Tonight, the Stoic path asks you to offer that same justice inward, not softness that avoids truth, not pity that keeps you stuck, but a firm and calm mercy that says, this pain is real, but I will not turn it into punishment. That sentence is powerful because it gives pain a boundary. It allows the feeling to exist, but it does not allow the feeling to become a weapon against you. You can say, I am hurt, without saying, I am broken beyond repair. You can say, I am tired, without saying, I am failing. You can say, I still remember, without saying, I have made no progress. You can say, this is hard, without saying, I cannot survive it. The Stoics believed that suffering grows when the mind gives false meaning to events. Something happens, and the mind immediately adds a judgment. This is unbearable. This is humiliating. This means I am nothing. This means my life is over. But the event and the judgment are not the same, and when you separate them, space opens. That space is where freedom begins. Maybe the pain is that someone left. That is real. But the punishment says, I was not worth staying for. That may not be true. Maybe the pain is that you made a poor choice. That is real. But the punishment says, I cannot trust myself ever again. That may not be true. Maybe the pain is that life did not unfold the way you hoped. That is real. But the punishment says, my chance is gone. That may not be true. Maybe the pain is that you feel behind, tired, or uncertain. That is real. But the punishment says, everyone else is doing better than me. That may not be true. At night, the tired mind often forgets to test these judgments. It accepts them because they feel strong. But strong feelings are not always accurate teachers. Sometimes they are only loud because they are old. Sometimes they sound convincing because you have heard them for years. Sometimes they feel true because your nervous system has practiced them like a song. But tonight, you can stop singing along. You can let the pain speak without letting punishment answer. When sadness comes, you can say, this is sadness, not a verdict. When regret comes, you can say, this is regret, not a life sentence. When fear comes, you can say, this is fear, not a prophecy. When shame comes, you can say, this is shame, not the truth of who I am. This is not just comfort, this is mental discipline, this is Stoic training. You are teaching the mind to name things correctly, because what you name correctly, you can carry wisely. What you name wrongly, you suffer under blindly. If you call pain weakness, you will hate yourself for feeling. If you call grief failure, you will rush what needs time. If you call fear truth, you will obey every dark thought. If you call shame wisdom, you will stay trapped in a voice that was never meant to guide you. But if you call pain pain, you can meet it cleanly. You can breathe with it. You can learn from it. You can let it move through without building your identity around it. Before sleep, this becomes important. The mind needs a lighter way to hold what hurts. Not everything must be solved, but everything can be softened by truth. Tell yourself, I do not need to punish myself in order to grow. Tell yourself, I can take the lesson without accepting the cruelty. Tell yourself, pain may be here tonight, but punishment does not have to sleep beside me. And as those words settle, notice how much space they create. The pain may not disappear at once, but the pressure around it begins to loosen. The ache is no longer being squeezed by judgment. The memory is no longer being sharpened by shame. The heart is no longer being forced to heal under threat. This is how the tired mind begins to rest. Not because every hurt is gone, not because every emotional wound has closed, but because the mind has stopped adding punishment to pain. Tonight, you are allowed to feel without condemning yourself for feeling. You are allowed to be tender without calling yourself weak. You are allowed to be affected without believing you are defeated. You are allowed to carry a wound without turning the wound into your name. Pain may visit, but punishment does not have to stay. And when the mind finally understands this, the night becomes less harsh. The pillow becomes less heavy. The breath becomes less trapped. The soul no longer has to defend its humanity. You can rest as someone who is still healing. You can sleep as someone who is still learning. You can wake as someone who is not free from every pain, but free from the extra suffering of turning pain against yourself. And after the mind learns to separate pain from punishment, another hidden burden becomes easier to see, because sometimes the pain you carry is not only from what happened, it is from the meaning you gave to what someone else chose. Someone left, and you called it proof that you were not enough. Someone changed, and you called it proof that you were too hard to love. Someone betrayed your trust, and you called it proof that you were foolish for caring. But another person's choice is not always a mirror of your worth. Sometimes it is only a mirror of their own limits. There is a quiet kind of suffering that begins when you start carrying people's actions as if they were your personal report card. They were dishonest, and you blamed your own blindness. They were cold, and you blamed your own need. They walked away, and you blamed your own value. They failed to choose you, and you turned their absence into a sentence against yourself. And slowly, without noticing it, you began collecting other people's behavior and placing it inside your identity. This is one of the heaviest things a person can bring into the night. Because when you believe someone's choice proves your failure, you do not only lose peace with them, you lose peace with yourself. You begin searching your past for evidence. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe I was not interesting enough. Maybe I should have been quieter. Maybe I should have been stronger. Maybe I should have known. And the mind keeps digging, not because it finds truth, but because it is trying to explain pain in a way that gives you control. This is painful, but also very human. The mind often prefers self-blame over uncertainty, because if everything was your fault, then maybe you can prevent it next time. If you can find the exact flaw in yourself, maybe no one will hurt you again. So the mind turns another person's choice into your failure, because failure feels more controllable than helplessness. But the Stoic mind must be honest here. Not everything that hurt you was caused by you. Not everyone who left did so because you lacked value. Not everyone who misunderstood you did so because you explained badly. Not everyone who betrayed you did so because you were foolish. Some people act from fear, some from selfishness, some from immaturity, some from confusion, some from wounds they never healed, some from desires they never disciplined, some from weaknesses they never admitted, and none of these must become your name. Stoicism teaches that your true work is your character, your honesty, your courage, your patience, your discipline, your ability to act with dignity, even when life does not reward you immediately. But Stoicism also teaches that other people's character is not yours to command. You may influence, you may communicate, you may love, you may give, you may try, but you cannot enter another person's mind and make them wise. You cannot enter another person's heart and make them loyal. You cannot enter another person's conscience and make them fair. When you forget this, you begin carrying what belongs to them. And tonight, that is the burden you must begin to put down. There is a difference between learning from a relationship and blaming yourself for another person's choices. Learning says, what did this teach me about boundaries, patience, honesty, or self-respect? Blame says, what is wrong with me that made them do this? Learning gives you power. Blame steals it. Learning helps you grow. Blame keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. Learning opens the future. Blame keeps reopening the wound. Maybe there were things you could have done better. That is possible. Every human being can look back and see places where they could have spoken with more clarity, left earlier, chosen differently, or protected their peace sooner. But your imperfect response does not make you responsible for someone else's poor character. Your softness did not force someone to be cruel. Your trust did not force someone to be dishonest. Your love did not force someone to take it for granted. Your hope did not force someone to disappoint you. You can own your part without owning theirs. That sentence is freedom. You can own your reaction without owning their intention. You can own your boundaries without owning their behavior. You can own your healing without owning their refusal to grow. You can own the lesson without carrying the shame. At night, the mind may still ask, why did they do that to me? But sometimes the more healing question is, why am I making their choice the measure of my worth? Because when you do that, you give them too much power. You let their confusion define your clarity. You let their absence define your value. You let their rejection define your identity. You let someone who may not even understand themselves become the judge of who you are. No tired soul should sleep under that judgment. The Stoics would remind you that other people's opinions, reactions, and choices are unstable things. They can change with mood, fear, pressure, desire, pride, or ignorance. If your peace depends on these things, your peace will always be shaking. One person approves of you and you feel valuable. Another person ignores you and you feel small. One person stays and you feel safe. Another person leaves and you feel unworthy. This is not freedom. This is emotional slavery to what you cannot control. To become free, you must bring your worth back home. You must stop leaving it in the hands of people who may not know how to hold it with care. This does not mean you become cold. It does not mean you stop loving. It does not mean you trust no one. It means you stop using other people's choices as the final proof of who you are. Love can be real and still not be returned properly. Effort can be sincere and still not be valued. Kindness can be given and still not be understood. Your goodness does not become false because someone failed to honor it. Sometimes the pain is not that you failed. Sometimes the pain is that you gave something meaningful to someone who did not have the capacity to receive it with maturity. This is not a reason to hate them. It is a reason to release the false conclusion you made about yourself. Because the mind often forms conclusions in the middle of pain. Someone leaves, and the mind says, I am not worth staying for. Someone lies, and the mind says, I am foolish. Someone ignores you, and the mind says, I do not matter. But pain is not the best place to write permanent truths. Pain is emotional weather. It can be intense, it can be real, but it does not always describe the whole sky. You must be careful what you allow pain to teach you. Let it teach you discernment. Let it teach you boundaries. Let it teach you patience with yourself. Let it teach you the difference between love and attachment. Let it teach you that not everyone who receives your heart knows how to protect it. But do not let it teach you that you are worthless. Do not let it teach you that you are unlovable. Do not let it teach you that someone else's weakness is your identity. Before sleep, this matters deeply. Because if you carry other people's choices into bed as proof of your failure, you are not only resting with memory, you are resting with false evidence. You are letting the mind build a case against you using another person's behavior. And that is not fair. That is not wisdom. That is not truth. Tonight, begin separating what belongs to you from what belongs to them. Their choice belongs to them. Their dishonesty belongs to them. Their silence belongs to them. Their inability to value you belongs to them. Their confusion belongs to them. Their lack of courage belongs to them. Your healing belongs to you. Your dignity belongs to you. Your next choice belongs to you. Your peace belongs to you. Your character belongs to you. This separation is not bitterness. It is order. It is putting things back where they belong. The Stoic life is a life of inner order. And inner order begins when you stop mixing your worth with another person's actions. Maybe they did not choose you. That hurts. But it does not prove you were not worthy of being chosen. Maybe they did not understand you. That hurts. But it does not prove your truth was meaningless. Maybe they did not protect your trust. That hurts. But it does not prove your trust was stupid. Maybe they walked away. That hurts. But it does not prove you were impossible to love. Sometimes people choose from the level of their own awareness. Sometimes they choose from fear. Sometimes they choose from habit. Sometimes they choose what is easy instead of what is right. And if you turn every one of those choices into proof of your failure, you will keep punishing yourself for battles that happened inside someone else. Tonight, let that end gently. Say within yourself, I will learn what is mine to learn, but I will not carry what is theirs to answer for. Say, I release the need to make their choice mean something terrible about me. Say, their action may have hurt me, but it does not define me. Say, I return my worth to myself. And as you say this, do not expect every feeling to disappear at once. The heart may still ache. The memory may still come. The loss may still have a voice. But something important begins to shift. The pain remains human, but the false blame begins to loosen. The wound is still seen, but the identity is no longer built around it. That is freedom. Not freedom from ever being disappointed, not freedom from ever being hurt, but freedom from carrying other people's choices as proof that you failed. Because you did not come into this night to be judged by someone else's limitations. You came here to return to yourself, to gather back the pieces of your peace, to remember that your worth was never meant to be decided by those who could not see it clearly. Let them carry their choices. Let life carry the consequences. Let time reveal what it must. And let your soul rest from the false work of blaming itself for what another person chose to do. You can fall asleep without understanding every reason. You can rest without receiving every apology. You can heal without turning their behavior into your identity. And when morning comes, may you wake with a quieter truth inside you. What they chose may have hurt you, but it does not have to become the story of who you are. And after you stop carrying other people's choices as proof of your failure, a deeper kind of freedom becomes possible. Because one of the hardest things the heart must learn is this: you can accept what happened without saying it was right. You can stop fighting reality without protecting the person who hurt you. You can release the argument without calling the pain acceptable. There is a quiet confusion many people carry. They believe acceptance means approval. They believe if they accept what happened, they are saying it was fair. They believe if they stop resisting the memory, they are letting someone get away with it. They believe peace is a betrayal of their own pain. So they keep the wound alive, not because they want to suffer, but because suffering feels like proof that the wound mattered. But pain does not need to stay open forever to prove it was real. What happened may have been wrong. It may have been unfair. It may have been careless, cruel, disappointing, or deeply painful. It may have changed how you see people, how you trust, how you sleep, how you speak, how you protect yourself. And still the truth remains. Refusing to accept that it happened does not undo it. It only keeps your soul tied to the moment, as if resistance can rewrite history. The Stoics understood that peace begins when the mind stops arguing with reality. Not because reality is always kind, not because life always gives justice in the way we expect, not because people always do what they should, but because the mind loses strength when it spends its life fighting what has already taken place. Acceptance is not surrendering to the person who hurt you. Acceptance is surrendering the impossible task of making the past untrue. That is where freedom begins. To accept what happened is to say, this is part of my story now, but it will not control the whole story. It is to say, this hurt me, but I will not keep handing my peace back to the same moment. It is to say, I see the truth clearly, and because I see it clearly, I no longer need to pretend, deny, chase, explain, or reopen what has already been revealed. Approval says, this was okay. Acceptance says this was real. Approval says they were right. Acceptance says, I will stop letting their wrongness rule my inner life. Approval protects the action. Acceptance protects your peace. These two are not the same. Many people stay trapped because they think anger is the only thing keeping their dignity alive. They think if they soften, they will lose the proof that they were hurt. But dignity is not found in staying angry forever. Dignity is found in refusing to let what happened turn you into someone who cannot rest, cannot trust life, cannot breathe without remembering, cannot move forward without dragging the same pain behind them. You do not need endless resistance to honor your suffering. You can honor your suffering by healing from it. You can honor your younger self by no longer forcing them to relive it every night. You can honor the truth by naming what happened clearly, then choosing not to build your entire identity around it. This is the quiet freedom of acceptance. It does not shout. It does not announce itself. It does not always feel powerful at first. Sometimes it feels like tired honesty, a long breath, a soft sentence inside the heart. This happened. I wish it had not. But I cannot live forever inside the wish. That sentence may not remove the pain immediately, but it begins to remove the struggle around the pain. And often the struggle is what exhausts you most. There is the pain of what happened, and then there is the pain of refusing to let it be part of reality. The second pain is where many people live for years. They wake up thinking, how could they? They sleep thinking, why did life allow this? They move through the day trying to find an answer that will make the past feel less real. But some answers never come in a form that satisfies the heart. Some people never explain themselves. Some apologies never arrive. Some losses never make sense. Some doors close without giving you the kindness of a reason. If your peace depends on those things, your peace remains in someone else's hands. The Stoic path brings peace back into your hands by asking, what is mine now? Not, what should they have done? Not, why did the past happen this way? Not, how do I force them to understand? But, what is mine now? Your response is yours. Your boundaries are yours. Your healing is yours. Your next decision is yours. Your refusal to become bitter is yours. Your choice to rest is yours. Acceptance returns you to what is still available. Resistance keeps you staring at what was taken. This does not mean you stop seeking justice where justice is possible. It does not mean you allow harmful behavior to continue. It does not mean you stay where you are being harmed. It does not mean you silence your truth. Acceptance is not passivity. It is clarity. It allows you to act from wisdom instead of acting from the wound. It allows you to protect yourself without being consumed by revenge. It allows you to remember without drowning. It allows you to walk away without needing the other person to agree that you were right. Sometimes the most powerful acceptance sounds like this. I no longer need them to understand my pain before I protect my peace. That is not approval. That is self-command. At night, this lesson becomes important because the mind often reopens old pain in search of a different feeling. It wants the memory to hurt less. It wants the ending to feel fair. It wants the person to come back with the right words. It wants life to explain why things unfolded the way they did. But when the mind cannot get those things, it keeps circling. And the circle becomes suffering. Acceptance breaks the circle. It says, I will not keep asking the night to fix what only time, wisdom, and healing can soften. It says, I will not spend this sleep arguing with what has already entered my story. It says, I can tell the truth about the pain without giving the pain the final word. This is not easy. There may be a part of you that still wants to fight. A part that still wants someone to admit they were wrong. A part that still wants the past to stand before you and explain itself. Be gentle with that part. It is not foolish. It is wounded. It wants safety. It wants fairness. It wants repair. But you must not let that wounded part lead your whole life into endless resistance. You can comfort it, without obeying it. You can say, yes, that hurt. You can say, yes, that was not fair. You can say, yes, I deserved better. And then you can also say, but I deserve peace too. Because this is the part many people forget. You deserved better then, and you deserve peace now. Do not let the fact that you were denied one become the reason you deny yourself the other. Do not let yesterday's unfairness turn into tonight's self-abandonment. Do not keep proving that something hurt you by letting it keep hurting you in the same way. The Stoic heart learns to stand in truth without being chained by it. It does not decorate the past. It does not call wrong right. It does not force false positivity over deep wounds. It simply refuses to let the wound become the ruler of the inner world. Tonight, acceptance may begin with one breath, one honest breath. A breath that says, this happened. Another that says, I did not approve of it. Another that says, but I release the demand that it become different before I rest. Slowly the body hears this. The mind hears it too. The soul begins to understand that it no longer has to guard the pain all night. You can accept the chapter without rereading it every evening. You can accept the loss without calling it good. You can accept the betrayal without excusing it. You can accept the ending without agreeing with how it came. You can accept the scar without hating the skin that survived it. And as this truth settles, the night becomes less hostile. The memory may still exist, but it no longer owns every corner of the room. The pain may still have a place, but it no longer gets the throne. The past may still speak, but it no longer gets to command your breath. This is quiet freedom, not the loud freedom of everything being fixed, not the perfect freedom of never remembering, but the deeper freedom of saying, I see what happened clearly, and I no longer need to destroy myself because of it. So tonight, let acceptance be gentle. Let it come without forcing. Let it come without pretending. Let it come as a small opening in the heart where resistance used to live. You do not have to approve. You do not have to explain. You do not have to call the pain beautiful. You only have to stop giving the past the power to keep you awake, as if your suffering could change it. What happened, happened. What hurt, hurt. What was wrong may still be wrong, but you are still here, you are still breathing, you are still allowed to heal, and because you are still here, the story is not over. Tonight, accept the truth without bowing to the pain. Accept the wound without becoming the wound. Accept the past without becoming its prisoner. And as your body begins to soften into sleep, let the quiet freedom rise within you. You do not approve of what happened. You simply release your soul from the endless fight against the fact that it did. And after you learn to accept what happened without approving of it, the body begins to reveal another truth. Because even when you lie still, even when the lights are off, even when the room is quiet, your body may still feel like it is bracing for something. And often this is because the mind is still defending itself against pain that is no longer standing in front of you. There is a kind of tiredness sleep alone cannot touch. The body is in bed, but the mind is still wearing armor. The hands may be still, but the thoughts are fighting. The eyes may be closed, but something inside is still explaining, proving, preparing, protecting, and answering questions no one is asking anymore. You want rest, but your inner world is still in a battle position. This is why the body cannot fully rest while the mind is still defending itself. Defense is heavy, even when it is silent, even when no one can see it, even when it happens only inside your thoughts. The mind defends itself by replaying old conversations, trying to find the perfect response. It defends itself by remembering every accusation, every rejection, every misunderstanding, every moment someone made you feel small. It defends itself by building arguments in the dark, as if the right sentence could finally prove your worth to people who are not even in the room. And the body listens to all of this. The body does not always know the difference between a real danger and a remembered one. If the mind keeps saying, "I must protect myself," the body responds as if danger is near. The breath becomes shallow, the chest becomes tight, the shoulders hold tension, the stomach feels unsettled, the jaw tightens. Sleep becomes light, broken, or difficult, because the body is receiving the message that it is not yet safe to let go. This is not weakness, it is the body obeying the mind's alarm. The Stoics understood that the inner life must be governed with wisdom. They knew that a person could be physically alone and still mentally surrounded by enemies. They knew that the mind could turn memory into a battlefield. And they taught that true peace begins when you stop giving every insult, every old wound, every judgment, and every fear permission to rule your inner state. Because not every thought deserves a defense. Some thoughts only need to be dismissed. Some memories only need to be named. Some accusations only need to be released. Some people do not need another explanation from you. Some battles are already over, but the mind keeps showing up with weapons. This is where the tired soul must become wise. You must ask, what am I still defending myself against? Not loudly, not harshly, just honestly. Are you defending yourself against someone's opinion? Against a mistake you already learned from? Against a version of you that no longer exists? Against the fear that people will misunderstand your heart? Against the need to be seen as good, strong, innocent, loyal, intelligent, or enough? Sometimes the mind cannot rest because it is still trying to win a case in the court of someone else's perception. But peace does not come from winning every invisible argument. Peace comes from no longer needing to attend every invisible argument. This is difficult because being misunderstood hurts. Being judged unfairly hurts. Being blamed for things you did not mean hurts. Being treated as if your heart was not sincere can leave a deep mark. And when the world goes quiet, the mind may try to repair the mark by defending itself again and again. It says, if they only knew the truth. If I could explain it better. If I could make them understand. If I could prove I was not what they thought. But here is the painful truth that can become freedom. Some people will only understand you through the limits of their own mind. Some people will hear your truth and still choose their version. Some people will hold an image of you that does not match your heart. Some people will judge the chapter they saw without knowing the whole story. And if your body must wait for all of them to understand you before it rests, you may never rest deeply. The Stoic does not abandon truth. The Stoic simply stops begging every mind to hold the truth correctly. You can live with integrity without being understood by everyone. You can know your intention without forcing every person to agree with it. You can correct what needs correction without defending yourself forever. You can apologize where you were wrong without becoming a prisoner of shame. You can explain once or twice when wisdom calls for it, and then release the need to keep proving yourself to a closed door. There is a special kind of rest that enters the body when the mind says, I know what is true within me, and I do not need to fight all night to make the world see it. That sentence softens something. It loosens the jaw. It lowers the shoulders. It tells the nervous system, the battle is not here anymore. Because many nights the body is not kept awake by the present moment. It is kept awake by imagined confrontation. You are answering messages that have not come, explaining yourself to people who are not listening, preparing for criticism that may never arrive, fighting old scenes that have already ended. This is not rest. This is emotional rehearsal. And emotional rehearsal can feel useful because it gives the mind a false sense of control. It says, if I think through every possible attack, I will be safe. But the more you prepare for every possible wound, the more the body lives, as if the wound is already happening. You do not become safer, you become more tired. The Stoic way is not to be careless, it is to be precise. If there is something to say it at the proper time. If there is something to repair it with humility. If there is a boundary to set it clearly. If there is a lesson to learn it honestly. But once the action for today is complete, stop making your body carry the fight. The body needs a signal that the day is over. Not every problem is over. Not every situation is solved. Not every person understands. But the day is over. And that matters. Before sleep, the mind must learn to lower its weapons, to stop scanning every memory for danger, to stop preparing every answer, to stop defending a self that is allowed to be imperfect, human, learning, and still worthy of rest. You do not need to be spotless before you sleep. You do not need to prove your innocence to the dark. You do not need to correct every false opinion before your body is allowed to soften. There is a difference between protecting yourself and remaining trapped in defense. Protection has purpose. It sets a boundary. It takes action. It removes you from harm. It chooses wisely. But defense without end becomes a cage. It keeps the mind alert long after the danger has passed. It makes every quiet moment feel like a place where another emotional attack may arrive. Tonight, your body needs you to tell the truth. I am not in that moment anymore. You are not in the old argument. You are not standing before the person who judged you. You are not trapped in the message you wish you had sent. You are not inside the room where you felt small. You are here, in this breath, in this night, in this body that has carried enough. This return to the present is not small. It is a form of freedom, because the mind that keeps defending itself is often living in another time. It is still in yesterday, last year, childhood, the breakup, the failure, the accusation, the rejection, the betrayal. But the body can only rest in the present. So if the mind refuses to return, the body remains divided. Part of you is in bed. Part of you is still in battle. Stoicism teaches you to gather yourself back, to say, what happened has passed. What may happen is not yet here. What is here now is this moment, and I will not abandon it to fight ghosts. This is not poetic softness. It is discipline. It is the discipline of returning your attention to what is real now. And what is real now? The surface beneath you, the breath moving through you, the quiet around you. The fact that no explanation is required in this moment. The fact that your body does not need to earn permission to rest. The fact that peace can begin before every person understands your side. Let this become your practice tonight. When the mind begins to defend, notice it. Do not attack it. It is only trying to protect you, but gently remind it, you do not need to guard me this way right now. When it begins preparing an argument, say, not tonight. When it begins proving your worth, say, my worth does not need a closing statement. When it begins replaying an accusation, say, I do not live inside that voice anymore. Slowly, the body will begin to believe what the mind repeats with calm authority. The breath will deepen, the muscles will release, the heart will stop leaning forward into danger, the night will stop feeling like a battlefield and begin to feel like shelter. This is why inner defense must end before true rest can begin, because sleep is an act of trust. The body must trust that it can let go. The mind must trust that it does not need to hold every weapon through the night. The heart must trust that silence does not mean it will be attacked by the past. And you must trust that you can return to the battle tomorrow if wisdom requires it, but you do not need to sleep inside the battle tonight. You are allowed to stop defending. You are allowed to be misunderstood and still rest. You are allowed to be imperfect and still rest. You are allowed to have unfinished conversations and still rest. You are allowed to let people think what they think without offering your whole night as a defense, because the body cannot rest while the mind is still standing guard against every old wound. But once the mind lowers its shield, the body receives the message it has been waiting for. The danger is not here, the trial is not here, the argument is not here, the past is not here. Only this breath is here. Only this night is here. Only this chance to soften is here. And as the mind stops defending, the body begins to remember how to rest. Not perfectly, not all at once, but gently, honestly, safely, like a tired soldier finally setting down the armor after carrying it far too long. Tonight, you do not need to win the argument. You do not need to correct every story. You do not need to convince every heart. You only need to come back to yourself. And in that return, the body can finally do what it has been longing to do all day. Rest. And after the body begins to rest from defending itself, another quiet battle appears, because sometimes the mind is not defending against danger. It is defending against being misunderstood. It keeps returning to people who already decided what they wanted to believe, hoping that one more explanation, one more sentence, one more act of goodness will finally make them see the truth. But the soul becomes tired when it keeps asking closed hearts to become fair witnesses. There is a deep pain in being misunderstood by someone you once wanted to reach. It can feel as if your whole inner world has been reduced to one wrong story. They saw your silence and called it pride. They saw your boundaries and called them cruelty. They saw your pain and called it weakness. They saw your distance and called it guilt. They saw one moment, one mistake, one reaction, one tired version of you, and decided that was the whole truth. And because you know there is more to the story, something inside you keeps wanting to explain. You want them to know what you meant. You want them to know what you carried. You want them to know how hard you tried. You want them to know that your heart was not as careless as they made it sound. You want them to know that you were hurting too. But there comes a point where explanation no longer brings peace. It only keeps you tied to the person who refuses to listen. This is one of the hardest lessons of Stoic sleep. Not everyone is available for truth. Some people are not misunderstanding you because the facts are unclear. They are misunderstanding you because their mind has already chosen a version of you that serves their anger, pride, fear, jealousy, or pain. And when someone is committed to misunderstanding you, more words do not always create clarity. Sometimes more words only give them more material to twist. That is painful to accept, but it is also freeing. Because if someone wants to understand you, they will listen with humility. They will ask, not only accuse. They will leave room for your humanity. They will care about the full picture, not only the part that supports their judgment. They may still disagree with you, but they will not need to destroy your character to make their point. A person who wants truth does not fear context. But a person committed to misunderstanding you does not want context. They want confirmation. They want the version of you that makes their feelings easier to justify. They want the story where they never have to question themselves. They want your explanation only if it can be used as evidence against you. And if you keep trying to win peace from that kind of mind, you will lose sleep again and again. The Stoics would ask a simple question. Is this within your control? You can control your honesty. You can control your tone. You can control whether you speak with dignity. You can control whether you correct what needs correction. You can control whether you apologize where you were wrong. But you cannot control whether another person receives truth with fairness. You cannot control whether they are emotionally mature enough to hold a fuller picture. You cannot control whether they prefer their anger to your explanation. This is where the tired mind must learn release. Not the release of becoming silent because you are weak. Not the release of letting lies define you. Not the release of pretending it does not hurt. But the release that says, I will not spend my life performing truth for someone who benefits from not seeing it. There is a kind of peace that begins when you stop trying to prove your heart to people who are invested in doubting it. It does not mean you become careless with your character. It means your character no longer depends on their recognition. You can still be honest even if they call you false. You can still be kind even if they call you cold. You can still be growing even if they only remember who you were at your worst. You can still be worthy of rest even if someone somewhere has chosen the wrong story about you. This is not easy because the human heart wants to be seen. It wants to be known correctly. It wants someone to look at the full truth and say, now I understand. That desire is natural. But when that desire becomes a need, it becomes a chain. You begin to chase understanding as if your peace cannot exist without it. You begin to shape your words, your behavior, your silence, your sleep, your whole inner life around the hope that someone will finally see you rightly. But what if they never do? Will you abandon yourself forever at the door of their opinion? Will you keep losing your nights to a person who has already decided not to listen? Will you keep explaining your soul to someone who only wants a confession that fits their story? At some point, wisdom must become stronger than the need to be understood. The Stoic heart learns to say, I know my intention. I know my effort. I know what I have corrected. I know what I must still improve. I know where I was wrong, and I know where I was misread. I do not need every person to agree with my truth before I'm allowed to rest in it. That kind of inner statement is not arrogance. It is stability. Arrogance refuses correction. Stability refuses endless accusation. Arrogance says, I am always right. Stability says, I will examine myself honestly, but I will not let another person's distorted view become my identity. This difference matters, because releasing the need to be understood does not mean you stop taking responsibility. It means you stop begging for emotional permission from people who are not listening in good faith. If you have done wrong, you can acknowledge it. If you need to repair something, you can try. If your words caused harm, you can speak with humility. But after you have acted with sincerity, you must not keep throwing your peace into the hands of someone who keeps moving the goalpost. Some people will demand an explanation, then reject it. They will ask for honesty, then punish it. They will say they want closure, then reopen the wound. They will say, tell me the truth, but only accept the version that makes you look guilty. To keep chasing approval, there is to enter a room with no door. Tonight, you are allowed to leave that room. You are allowed to let them misunderstand you without giving them your whole nervous system as payment. You are allowed to let their story exist somewhere outside you, without carrying it into your pillow. You are allowed to stop writing speeches in your head for conversations that will not heal you. You are allowed to stop correcting imaginary accusations in the dark. You are allowed to choose sleep over another night of trying to be seen by someone who has closed their eyes. This does not mean the misunderstanding will not hurt. It may hurt deeply, especially if the person mattered to you, especially if you wanted peace with them, especially if their opinion once felt like home. But pain does not always mean you must act. Sometimes pain only means something inside you is releasing a bond that was built on needing their approval. Let it release slowly. Let it release without hate. Let it release without revenge. Let it release with dignity. You do not have to become bitter to stop explaining. You do not have to become hard to stop pleading. You do not have to become distant from everyone. because one person refused to see you clearly. You only need to stop making your peace depend on someone else's willingness to understand. The Stoics teach that your reputation is partly outside your control. People may speak, people may assume, people may reduce, people may remember selectively, but your character is lived inside your choices. Reputation is what others carry about you. Character is what you carry within yourself. Do not confuse the two. If you spend your life trying to manage every reputation, you may lose the quiet work of building real character. Before sleep, bring your attention back to character. Did you act as honestly as you could today? Did you try to choose wisdom over reaction? Did you correct what was truly yours? Did you refuse to become cruel because someone else was unfair? Did you protect your peace without losing your humanity? If yes, then rest. And if no, then learn, adjust, and still rest. Because even growth needs sleep. Even repentance needs rest. Even a person who is becoming better must not be kept awake forever by the opinions of people who do not see the full path. Tonight, when the mind starts preparing one more explanation, answer it gently. Say, "The people meant to understand will listen with care. The people committed to misunderstanding will not be freed by my exhaustion." Say, "I release the need to be perfectly seen by imperfect eyes." Say, "I will live the truth instead of arguing for it all night." That last sentence matters. Live the truth. Do not spend every night defending it. Let your future conduct become the answer. Let your calm become the answer. Let your growth become the answer. Let your boundaries become the answer. Let your silence, when chosen with wisdom, become the answer. Not every false story requires your energy. Not every accusation deserves your sleep. Not every person deserves access to the deepest explanation of your heart. Some understanding is a gift. Some understanding is earned. Some understanding may never come, and still, you can be free. As the night deepens, let the need to be understood loosen its grip. Let the speeches fade. Let the inner arguments dissolve. Let the faces of those who misread you move further from the center of your mind. You do not need to drag them into sleep. You do not need to place them beside your breath. You do not need to let their version of you become the voice that closes your day. Return to yourself. Return to what is true. Return to the quiet dignity of knowing that you can be misunderstood and still be whole. Because peace is not found in making everyone see you correctly. Peace is found in no longer abandoning yourself when they do not. Tonight, you can release the need to convince. You can release the need to defend. You can release the need to be approved by those who have chosen confusion over fairness. And as that need leaves, the heart becomes lighter, the body becomes softer, the mind no longer has to perform in the dark. You can rest without the applause of understanding. You can sleep without the verdict of others. You can wake with your truth still intact, not because everyone saw it, but because you stopped losing yourself trying to make them. And after you release the need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you, another quiet truth begins to rise from the deeper part of the night. Because sometimes the soul is not tired from what happened today. It is tired from arguments it has been carrying for years. Arguments you never finished. Arguments you never won. Arguments you still replay in silence, hoping that one day your mind will find the words that would have changed everything. There is a kind of sleep that never becomes deep, because the heart is still standing in an old conversation. The body lies down, but the soul remains in front of someone from the past, trying to explain, trying to defend, trying to be heard, trying to say the sentence that was missing then, trying to win peace from a moment that has already ended. And this is why sleep becomes lighter, not because the bed is uncomfortable, not because the night is too short, not because the body has forgotten how to rest, but because the soul is still holding unfinished conflict. It is still gripping old words, old silence, old unfairness, old rejection, old betrayal, old moments where you walked away with too much left inside. You may not notice it during the day. The day keeps you moving. The day gives you duties, messages, noise, food, work, people, responsibilities. But night removes the distractions. And when the distractions leave, the old argument returns. Not always as a clear memory. Sometimes it returns as tension in the chest. Sometimes as a tight jaw. Sometimes as a sudden sadness. Sometimes as the feeling that you are still waiting for something you cannot name. That is what unresolved argument does. It keeps the soul awake even when the eyes are closed. The Stoics understood that inner peace cannot depend on winning every argument, because many arguments in life will never give you a clean ending. Some people will never admit what they did. Some conversations will never happen the way you hoped. Some moments will never give you the final word. Some people will walk away believing their own version, and no amount of truth will pull them back into fairness. If your peace depends on winning those arguments, your sleep will always remain shallow, because the soul cannot sink deeply into rest while it is still standing at the door of yesterday, waiting to be called back in and proven right. There are arguments you never won because the other person was not listening. There are arguments you never won because you were too tired to speak. There are arguments you never won because you were afraid of making things worse. There are arguments you never won because you did not yet know how to defend your own heart. There are arguments you never won because at that time, surviving mattered more than explaining. And now, years later, your mind may still return to the scene and say, "This is what I should have said. This is how I should have answered. This is where I should have stood up. This is what they needed to hear." But the painful truth is this: the perfect answer today cannot enter yesterday. That does not mean your feelings are foolish. It means the soul is asking for release in the wrong place. It is still trying to finish something in memory that can only be completed in acceptance. The Stoic path does not ask you to pretend you were treated fairly. It does not ask you to erase your anger. It does not ask you to call silence wisdom if silence was forced on you. But it does ask you to stop giving old arguments your present life. It asks you to ask a harder question. What am I hoping to win from this memory? Are you hoping to win understanding? Are you hoping to win justice? Are you hoping to win an apology? Are you hoping to win the feeling that you were right? Are you hoping to win back the dignity you felt was taken? These desires are human, but at night, when they cannot be fulfilled, they become weights. The mind keeps reaching for victory in a place where no new victory can happen. And because the victory never comes, the body never receives permission to rest deeply. This is why some people wake up tired even after sleeping for hours. The body may have slept, but the soul was still arguing, still answering, still defending, still proving, still standing in front of someone who is no longer there. You must understand this gently. Not every argument needs to be won for you to be free. Some arguments only end when you stop attending them. That is not weakness. That is self-command. Because there is a difference between losing an argument and leaving a battlefield that no longer deserves your life. Losing means someone defeated you. Leaving means you chose your peace over endless conflict. Losing means your worth was decided there. Leaving means your worth is no longer trapped there. The Stoic heart knows that not every person deserves the final explanation. Not every wrong deserves another night of your energy. Not every memory deserves the right to sit at the edge of your bed and speak until morning. You are allowed to close the inner door. You are allowed to say, "That moment did not give me justice, but I will not keep giving it my sleep." This is how deeper rest begins. You stop asking the old argument to bless you with peace. You stop waiting for the person in your memory to finally understand. You stop rewriting the scene as if the right version will heal the wound. You stop treating the final word as a doorway to freedom. Sometimes the final word is not something you say to them. Sometimes the final word is something you say to yourself. I know what happened. I know what I meant. I know what I survived. I know what I learned. I do not need to keep fighting this in the dark. Those words may not change the past, but they change your position inside it. You are no longer the person trapped in the scene. You become the witness, the learner, the one who has stepped back enough to see that the argument is over, even if the emotion is still leaving. And yes, the emotion may take time. The body may still remember the heat of the conflict. The heart may still tighten when the memory comes. The mind may still create the perfect speech. But each time this happens, you can return to one simple truth. I do not need to win this argument to reclaim myself. That truth is medicine for the night, because many old arguments are not really about the other person anymore. They are about the part of you that felt powerless, the part of you that felt unheard, the part of you that felt small, the part of you that wishes someone had protected you, believed you, chosen you, or treated your pain with care. So when the argument returns, do not only silence it harshly, listen beneath it. Maybe your soul is not asking for revenge. Maybe it is asking for dignity. Maybe it is not asking for another fight. Maybe it is asking to be believed by you. Maybe it is not asking you to go back. Maybe it is asking you to finally say, I should not have had to carry that alone. That kind of inner honesty can soften the argument, because once the wounded part of you feels seen by you, it no longer needs to drag you back to people who refuse to see it. This is important. You can give yourself the validation you kept waiting for from the person who hurt you. You can say, that was painful. You can say, that was unfair. You can say, I understand why I froze. You can say, I understand why I stayed silent. You can say, I understand why I still remember. You can say, I am not weak for needing time to release this. And when the soul receives that inner understanding, the old argument begins to lose its grip. Sleep becomes deeper when the soul no longer has to fight for its own reality. Tonight, if an old argument rises, do not step into the courtroom again. Do not build the speech. Do not sharpen the answer. Do not chase the moment where you finally win. Instead, breathe and ask, what part of me still needs care from this? Then offer care, not combat. If the part of you feels unheard, say, I hear you now. If the part of you feels ashamed, say, you did what you could then. If the part of you feels angry, say, your anger makes sense, but you do not have to burn all night. If the part of you feels powerless, say, you are safe enough to stop fighting for tonight. This is how Stoicism becomes tender without becoming weak. It does not deny the wound. It gives the wound order. It places the past in the past, the lesson in the mind, the dignity in the present, and the body back into rest. Because you cannot force deep sleep while the soul is still gripping invisible arguments. You cannot fully rest while part of you is still trying to prove, defend, correct, or win. The night asks for a different strength, the strength to stop returning, the strength to release the need for the last word, the strength to let silence become closure when conversation cannot. So tonight, let the arguments you never won become arguments you no longer attend. Let the people who refuse to hear you remain outside the room of your peace. Let the speeches fade. Let the defense rest. Let the old scene lose its power to call you back. You do not need to win in memory to be free in this moment. You do not need the perfect reply to recover your dignity. You do not need another person's agreement to know what was true. And as that truth settles, the soul begins to lower its voice. The body begins to sink more deeply. The night becomes less like a place of unfinished conflict and more like a place of return. Return to breath. Return to stillness. Return to yourself. Because sleep becomes lighter when the soul is still holding arguments it never won. But sleep becomes deeper when the soul finally understands that peace is not found in winning every old fight. Peace is found in no longer carrying the fight into the place where you were meant to be healed. And after the soul learns to stop holding arguments it never won, another form of peace becomes possible. Because not every burden in your heart was created by you. Some burdens were handed to you by people who refused to carry their own choices. Some were placed on you by situations you did not control. Some were inherited from pain that was never yours to begin with. And if you do not return them to their rightful owner, you may spend your whole life feeling heavy for things that were never truly yours. There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying what belongs to someone else. You may not notice it at first. It begins as concern. Then it becomes responsibility. Then it becomes guilt. Then it becomes identity. Before long, you are lying awake at night, holding someone else's anger, someone else's immaturity, someone else's disappointment, someone else's silence, someone else's failure to love properly, as if all of it is proof that you must fix more, explain more, give more, endure more. But the soul was never designed to carry every burden that touches it. Some things are yours to care about, but not yours to control. Some things are yours to respond to, but not yours to own. Some things are yours to grieve, but not yours to blame yourself for. Some things are yours to learn from, but not yours to drag through every night as if they belong inside your chest. The Stoic practice begins with order, inner order, the ability to look at life and say, this is mine, this is not mine, this is my action, this is their action, this is my response, this is their choice, this is my lesson, this is their burden. Without that order, the mind becomes a crowded room where every person's pain, every person's judgment, every person's expectation, and every person's unfinished growth comes to live inside you. And no one can sleep deeply in a room that crowded. Think of the burdens people often carry without realizing it. A parent's disappointment, a child's choices, a partner's distance, a friend's resentment, a family's expectations, a stranger's opinion, a mistake someone else refuses to admit, a conflict someone else helped create but left you to process alone. You begin to ask, what could I have done? How can I make them change? How can I keep them happy? How can I stop them from feeling pain? And slowly, the mind forgets where your responsibility ends. This is why many good people become tired. Not because they are weak, but because they confuse love with ownership. They think loving someone means carrying all their emotions. They think being kind means absorbing all their anger. They think being responsible means preventing everyone's disappointment. They think peace means making sure no one around them feels uncomfortable. But this is not love. This is self-erasure wearing the clothing of care. Stoicism teaches a harder, cleaner kind of love, a love that has boundaries. A love that acts with wisdom but does not try to become the manager of another person's soul. A love that helps where it can, speaks truth when needed, gives support when wise, but refuses to carry what another person must face for themselves. Because if you keep carrying someone else's burden, you may delay their growth and destroy your own peace at the same time. Returning a burden to its rightful owner does not mean you abandon people. It means you stop taking responsibility for what only they can choose, learn, heal, or answer for. You can encourage someone, but you cannot become their discipline. You can love someone, but you cannot become their conscience. You can forgive someone, but you cannot become the one who excuses their refusal to change. You can care about someone's pain, but you cannot make your body the place where their pain sleeps every night. There is a difference between compassion and carrying. Compassion says, "I see your pain." Carrying says, "Your pain is now my identity." Compassion says, "I will help where I wisely can." Carrying says, "I must suffer until you are okay." Compassion keeps the heart open. Carrying slowly breaks the heart down. This is why the Stoic mind must learn to return things, not with cruelty, not with anger, not with coldness, but with truth. This belongs to them. This belongs to life. This belongs to time. This belongs to the past. This belongs to the future. This belongs to a choice I did not make. This belongs to a lesson only they can learn. At night, this practice becomes deeply healing, because the mind often brings all the burdens of the day into the bed without sorting them. Someone spoke harshly, and you carry their tone. Someone was unhappy, and you carry their mood. Someone did not reply, and you carry their silence. Someone rejected your effort, and you carry their lack of appreciation. Someone created conflict, and you carry the pressure to fix the whole room. But before sleep, you must begin asking, whose burden is this? If the burden is guilt because you acted against your values, then there may be something to learn. That part is yours. Learn it with humility. Repair where possible. Choose better where you can. But if the burden is guilt because someone else did not like your boundary, that is not the same thing. Their discomfort is not always proof that you did wrong. If the burden is sadness because someone is struggling, your care is human. But if the burden becomes the belief that you must save them from every consequence of their choices, then you are carrying what belongs to their path. If the burden is regret because you made a mistake, take the lesson. But if the burden is shame because someone keeps reminding you of a version of you that you are already changing, return that burden. Their refusal to see your growth is not yours to carry into sleep. If the burden is fear about tomorrow, prepare what you can. But if the burden is the demand to control every possible outcome, return that burden to life. Tomorrow has its own weight. You do not need to drag all of it into tonight. This is the practice: gentle sorting, honest naming, calm release. The Stoic does not say, "Nothing affects me." The Stoic says, "I will not let everything own me." That is different. A wise person can feel deeply without becoming a home for every burden. A wise person can care without collapsing. A wise person can serve without surrendering their soul. A wise person can love others and still return to themselves. Sometimes the burden you need to return is blame. Someone may have placed their unhappiness on you because they did not want to face their own choices. They may have made you feel responsible for their anger, their loneliness, their bitterness, their disappointment, their inability to heal. And because you cared, you accepted the weight. You thought, maybe if I had been better, they would be different. But another person's refusal to grow is not always evidence of your failure. You can be kind and still be blamed. You can be honest and still be disliked. You can be patient and still be misunderstood. You can love someone well and still not be able to heal them. This truth hurts, but it also frees you. Because when you return blame to its rightful owner, you stop using your life to pay emotional debts you did not create. You stop lying awake trying to repair someone else's relationship with truth. You stop making your peace depend on whether another person finally becomes fair. There are also family burdens. These can be the hardest to put down. The burden to be the strong one. The burden to keep everyone together. The burden to never disappoint. the burden to carry old expectations, the burden to become what others needed instead of who you truly are. Some people have carried these burdens for so long that rest feels selfish, peace feels irresponsible, saying no feels like betrayal. But a burden being familiar does not mean it is yours. Sometimes your soul is tired because you have been loyal to expectations that were never built with your peace in mind. The Stoic path asks for courage here, the courage to honor people without becoming owned by them, the courage to respect family without losing yourself, the courage to love deeply without accepting every assignment placed on your back. Because some people will hand you a burden and call it duty. Some will hand you fear and call it love. Some will hand you control and call it care. Some will hand you guilt and call it loyalty. Wisdom must know the difference. Before sleep, return what must be returned. Return other people's judgments to their own minds. Return other people's choices to their own hands. Return other people's emotions to their own hearts. Return the past to time. Return the future to tomorrow. Return what you cannot control to life. Return what you have already learned to wisdom. And return yourself to yourself. This is not something you do once. It is a daily discipline. Because the world will keep handing you things. People will keep having opinions. Life will keep creating uncertainty. Loved ones will keep making choices. Memories will keep knocking. But each night, before sleep, you can practice inner order again. You can stand quietly at the doorway of your own mind and decide what is allowed to enter with you. Not every burden gets a bed in your soul. Not every problem gets your whole night. Not every person's discomfort gets to become your guilt. Not every old pain gets to become today's identity. Tonight say softly, I return what is not mine. Say, I keep the lesson, but I return the blame. Say, I keep compassion, but I return control. Say, I keep love, but I return the burden of saving everyone. Say, I keep responsibility for my actions, but I return responsibility for other people's choices. And as you do, feel the quiet strength in it. This is not rejection, this is order. This is not selfishness, this is sanity. This is not coldness. This is the wisdom of knowing that your soul cannot become a storage place for every unfinished thing in the world. When every burden returns to its rightful owner, the body begins to soften. The chest no longer has to hold what belongs to many lives at once. The mind no longer has to solve every heart before it sleeps. The breath no longer has to pass through the weight of everyone's expectations. You become lighter, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring with wisdom. And that is the Stoic practice: to carry what is yours with dignity, to release what is not yours with peace, to help without losing yourself, to love without becoming imprisoned, to rest without asking permission from burdens that never belong to you. Tonight, let every burden find its proper place. Let yours become lessons. Let theirs return to them. Let tomorrow wait for morning. Let the past return to yesterday. Let your heart come home empty-handed enough to rest. Because you cannot wake up free while sleeping under the weight of what was never yours. But once you return each burden to its rightful owner, the night opens. The breath deepens. The soul becomes quiet. And sleep finally has room to enter. And after you learn to return every burden to its rightful owner, another weight becomes clearer in the quiet. Because some of the heaviness you carry is not from what belongs to others. It is from a version of your own life that no longer exists, a path not taken, a choice not made, a door not opened, a moment you wish you could reach again. This is why regret feels so heavy. It keeps asking your soul to live in a life that time has already carried away. There is a special sadness in looking back and seeing a version of life that might have been. The words you might have said, the person you might have become, the chance you might have taken, the warning you might have listened to, the love you might have protected, the boundary you might have set, the courage you might have shown sooner. And once the mind begins walking down that road, it can feel endless. One thought becomes another. One memory becomes a whole different life. And before long you are no longer resting in the present. You are standing inside a life that never fully happened. Regret is heavy because it does not only remember, it rebuilds. It creates another world inside the mind and asks you to compare your real life to it. It says, if you had chosen differently, everything would be better. It says, if you had known sooner, you would not be here. It says, if you had been stronger, wiser, calmer, braver, your life would look different now. And maybe some of that feels true. Maybe some choices did change things. Maybe some mistakes did cost you. Maybe some delays did close doors. But regret becomes dangerous when it turns a lesson into a life sentence. The Stoic mind does not deny regret. It studies it. It asks, what is this regret trying to teach me? Because regret can carry wisdom when it is handled properly. It can show you what matters. It can reveal the values you ignored. It can point toward the kind of person you want to become. It can say, next time, choose honesty. Next time, speak earlier. Next time, do not abandon yourself. Next time, pay attention to the quiet warning inside you. But regret was never meant to become a home. It was meant to be a messenger. A messenger arrives, gives the message, and leaves. But many people keep regret sitting at the table of their soul for years. They feed it with more thoughts. They give it more nights. They let it speak louder than hope. They let it decide what kind of future is still possible. And slowly, regret stops being a teacher and becomes a ruler. That is when the heaviness begins. Because regret keeps asking for a life that no longer exists. It wants the old moment back. It wants the same choice with new wisdom. It wants the younger version of you to act with the understanding you only have now. It wants time to open a door it has already closed. And the more the mind demands this impossible life, the more exhausted the soul becomes. You cannot live in the life you might have had. You can only live in the life that is still in your hands. This is a hard truth, but it is also mercy. Because if you keep waiting for the life that no longer exists, you will keep missing the life that still needs you. You will miss the small chances still available, the people still present, the wisdom still growing, the morning still coming, the part of you still capable of becoming new. Regret will tell you that everything important is behind you, but wisdom says, no, not everything. Something is still here. The Stoics believed that time is one of the few things we must treat with deep seriousness. Not fear, but seriousness. Because time does not return simply because we feel sorry. It does not slow down because we are ashamed. It does not rebuild old moments because we now understand them better. Time moves, and the question is not, how do I go back? The question is, how do I use what remains with more wisdom? That question can save a life from becoming a shrine to yesterday. Maybe you regret staying too long somewhere that drained you. But the lesson is not to spend the rest of your nights hating yourself for staying. The lesson is to learn how to leave what breaks your peace sooner. Maybe you regret trusting someone who did not honor you. But the lesson is not to call yourself foolish forever. The lesson is to grow in discernment without losing the beauty of an open heart. Maybe you regret not starting earlier, but the lesson is not to declare yourself too late. The lesson is to start now with the seriousness that regret has taught you. Regret becomes lighter when it is turned into direction. It becomes heavier when it is turned into identity. If you say, I regret that choice, so I will live more honestly now, regret becomes a guide. But if you say, I regret that choice, so I am ruined, regret becomes a prison. If you say, I wish I had known better, so now I will honor what I know, regret becomes wisdom. But if you say, I did not know better, so I will punish myself forever, regret becomes cruelty. Before sleep, this difference matters, because the night can either become a place where regret teaches you gently, or a place where regret drags you into a life that cannot be recovered. The mind may bring back old scenes. It may show you the exact moment when things changed. It may show you the door you did not walk through. It may show you the person you did not choose, or the person you chose for too long. It may show you the words you never said. But you do not have to follow every scene to its painful ending. You can pause and say, yes, I see this. I understand why it hurts. I understand what it taught me. But I cannot move into that life. I can only move forward from this one. That is not weakness. That is maturity. There is also a hidden pride inside some regret. Not loud pride, but a quiet belief that you should have been able to control more than you could. You think you should have predicted everything. You should have known everyone's heart. You should have seen every consequence. You should have acted with perfect wisdom while you were still learning. But you were a human being inside a moment, not a god standing above time. The Stoic path brings you back to humility. It says, you did not know everything. You could not control everything. You were still becoming. Now that you know more, live better. This is not an excuse. It is a fair judgment, and fairness is necessary if the soul is going to rest. Regret also becomes heavy when it convinces you that one season has the power to define the whole story. But your life is not only one decision, it is not only one loss. It is not only one delay. It is not only one wrong turn. A life can bend and still continue. A person can lose time and still gain wisdom. A heart can choose wrongly and still learn to choose with greater clarity. A path can close and still leave open ground ahead. The mind may say, but I cannot get those years back. That may be true, but you can stop giving more years to the grief of losing them. You can stop losing today because yesterday was lost. You can stop turning one regret into a second regret by refusing to live now. Tonight, let this truth settle gently. The past does not need more of your life as payment. You have already paid with pain. You have already paid with thought. You have already paid with sleepless nights. Now let the payment end. Take the lesson, not the chain. Let regret show you what matters, then let it step aside. Let it teach you where your values are. Let it teach you how precious time is. Let it teach you to speak sooner, love wisely, protect your peace, choose with courage, and stop postponing your own life. But do not let it convince you that because one life no longer exists, no meaningful life remains. There is still a life here. It may not be the life you pictured. It may not be the life you would have chosen with perfect knowledge. It may carry scars, delays, consequences, and memories. But it is still yours. And because it is yours, it can still be lived with dignity. So tonight, if regret comes, do not let it drag you into the world of if only. Meet it with calm truth. Say that life is gone, but wisdom remains. Say, that door closed, but I am still here. Say, I cannot return to that moment, but I can honor what it taught me. Say, I will not abandon the present because I am grieving the past. And as you say this, something soft begins to happen. The mind stops reaching backward with both hands. The body stops bracing against a life that cannot be changed. The heart begins to release the picture of what should have been, and slowly returns to what still can be. This is how regret becomes lighter. Not by erasing the past, not by pretending everything happened for a reason, not by forcing yourself to smile over what hurt, but by refusing to keep asking your soul to live where time no longer lives. Tonight, you are allowed to grieve the life that did not happen. You are allowed to feel the ache of what cannot return. You are allowed to admit that some choices mattered deeply, but you are also allowed to come back. Back to this breath. Back to this body. Back to this night. Back to the life that is still waiting for your presence. Because regret feels heavy when it keeps asking for a life that no longer exists. But freedom begins when you stop trying to enter that life and start bringing your wisdom into the one that remains. And after regret teaches you that you cannot live inside a life that no longer exists, another quiet mercy becomes possible. Because if regret keeps pulling you backward, mistakes often do something even harsher. They try to turn one moment into your entire identity. They take one wrong choice, one weak season, one poor reaction, one failure to know better, and whisper, "This is who you are now." But a mistake is not a life sentence unless you keep agreeing to serve it. There is a heavy pain in believing you have been permanently marked by what you once did wrong. It follows you into quiet rooms. It sits beside you when you try to rest. It speaks in the voice of shame and says, "You ruined it. You can never be trusted again. You always do this. You are not the kind of person who gets to begin again." And when the mind hears these words long enough, it stops seeing the mistake as an event. It starts seeing it as a verdict. But the Stoic mind must learn to separate the event from the verdict. A mistake is something that happened. A sentence is something the mind writes afterward. The mistake may have been real. The pain may have been real. The consequence may be real. But the meaning you attach to it can either become a teacher or a prison. And many people are not suffering only because they made mistakes. They are suffering because they keep treating every mistake as proof that they are beyond repair. This is not wisdom. This is shame pretending to be truth. Stoicism does not excuse careless living. It asks you to examine yourself honestly. It asks you to look at your actions without hiding. It asks you to see where you acted from fear, pride, anger, weakness, confusion, or desire. But it does not ask you to turn self-examination into self-destruction. The purpose of seeing your mistake is not to hate yourself more clearly. The purpose is to become more awake. A mistake should make you wiser, not permanently condemned. There is a difference between saying, "I did something wrong," and saying, "I am wrong as a person." The first statement opens the door to growth. The second locks the door from the inside. The first gives you a place to begin. The second convinces you there is no point trying. The first is honest. The second is cruel. And if you repeat the second one at night, your body will carry shame into sleep as if it were truth. This is why you must be careful with the language you use inside your mind. A tired mind can become dramatic. It uses words like always, never, ruined, finished, impossible. It turns one failure into a full identity. It says, "I always mess things up," when the truth may be, "I made a painful choice." It says, "I can never change," when the truth may be, "Change will require patience." It says, "My life is over," when the truth may be, "This part of my life is asking for repair." The Stoic practice is to speak accurately, not softly in a false way, but accurately. Accuracy is mercy. Accuracy prevents the mind from making the wound larger than the truth. If you failed in one area, name that area. If you hurt someone, name the action. If you ignored a warning, name the warning. If you acted without wisdom, name the pattern. But do not name your whole self as worthless, because one part of your life needs correction. A mistake is a signal. It points to something that needs attention. Maybe you need more discipline. Maybe you need stronger boundaries. Maybe you need to pause before speaking. Maybe you need to stop choosing from loneliness. Maybe you need to stop trusting people only because you want the story to be good. Maybe you need to stop abandoning your values when pressure becomes loud. These are serious lessons, but they are not permanent sentences. They are invitations to live with more awareness. The danger is when you stop at shame and never reach wisdom. Shame says, hide. Wisdom says, understand. Shame says, you are finished. Wisdom says, begin again with clearer eyes. Shame says, you are the mistake. Wisdom says, the mistake is a teacher, but it is not your name. Before sleep, shame often becomes louder because there is nothing else to cover it. The mind brings up the old scene and makes you watch it again. It shows you the face, the words, the decision, the outcome. Then it waits for you to punish yourself. And because you may believe punishment is the price of responsibility, you obey. You replay. You tighten. You accuse. You deny yourself rest, as if staying awake in pain can pay for what happened. But pain does not repair what happened. Only changed living can do that. If there is an apology to give it when the time is right. If there is a pattern to break it with practice. If there is a consequence to face it with dignity. If there is a lesson to carry it with humility. But do not mistake nightly self-punishment for transformation. A person can suffer for years and still not change. Another person can face the truth once with courage and begin a new path. The difference is not how much they hate themselves. The difference is what they do with the truth. The Stoic does not ask, how long must I punish myself? The Stoic asks, what virtue is this mistake calling me to build? Is it patience, courage, honesty, self-control, humility, discernment, compassion, responsibility? Once you find the virtue, the mistake becomes useful. It no longer sits above you as a judge, it stands behind you as a lesson. This is how you stop treating every mistake as a permanent sentence. You turn the sentence into instruction. You turn the shame into a boundary. You turn the regret into a value. You turn the failure into a clearer way of living. You stop saying, this proves I am broken, and begin saying, this shows me where I must grow. That shift is not small. It changes the way the heart sleeps. Because when the mind knows that a mistake has a purpose, it does not need to keep circling the same pain. It can rest, knowing the lesson has been received. It can say, I will not forget what this taught me, but I will not keep using it to wound myself. It can say, I accept responsibility, but I reject permanent condemnation. It can say, I was wrong there, but I am not beyond becoming better. You are allowed to become better after being wrong. That sentence may sound simple, but many people do not truly believe it. They allow others to grow, but not themselves. They forgive people in stories, but keep themselves trapped in one chapter. They believe in second chances for everyone except the person inside their own skin. But if you deny yourself the right to grow, you deny the very purpose of wisdom. Wisdom exists because human beings can learn. Growth exists because a mistake does not have to be the end of the road. Even the Stoics, who spoke so much about virtue, did not pretend human beings were flawless. They knew life was practice, daily practice. You fall short, you notice, you correct, you return. You lose patience, you learn patience. You act from fear, you learn courage. You speak too quickly, you learn restraint. You choose wrongly, you learn discernment. The goal is not to become someone who never stumbles. The goal is to become someone who does not stop walking toward virtue after stumbling. A permanent sentence says, you are done. Stoicism says, return to the practice. Tonight, return to the practice. Do not let the mind drag you into the old courtroom again. Do not let one mistake become the name written over your whole life. Do not let shame speak as if it knows the future. Shame only knows the past. Wisdom knows how to use the past without becoming owned by it. If a mistake rises in your mind tonight, meet it differently. Do not run from it. Do not bow to it. Do not attack yourself with it. Look at it calmly and ask, "What are you here to teach?" Then listen for the lesson. Take only what helps you live better. Leave the rest. Leave the insult. Leave the exaggeration. Leave the hopelessness. Leave the cruel voice that says you are permanently stained. Because you are not a finished judgment. You are a living person, and a living person can choose again. Maybe not the same moment, maybe not the same path, maybe not with the same people, but you can choose again inside the life that remains. You can choose honesty now. You can choose patience now. You can choose humility now. You can choose repair now. You can choose silence where you once reacted. You can choose courage where you once hid. You can choose self-respect where you once begged to be accepted. This is how the soul becomes lighter, not by pretending mistakes do not matter, but by refusing to let them become permanent chains. The past may show where you fell, but the present shows whether you rise with wisdom. So, as night settles around you, let this truth enter softly. The sentence is not permanent when the lesson is alive. If you are learning, the story is still moving. If you are becoming more honest, the mistake did not win. If you are choosing better, the old version of you is not the final version. You do not need to punish yourself through the night to prove you understand. You do not need to wear shame forever to prove the mistake mattered. You do not need to stay trapped in one chapter to prove you have changed. Tonight, let the mistake become a teacher and not a judge. Let the lesson remain, but let the sentence end. Let your body rest from the belief that one wrong step has destroyed the whole road. You are allowed to be accountable and still sleep. You are allowed to be imperfect and still heal. You are allowed to have fallen short and still wake up with dignity. Because every mistake is not a life sentence. Sometimes it is only the place where wisdom finally began speaking loud enough for you to listen. And after you learn not to treat every mistake as a permanent sentence, the mind becomes ready for a deeper lesson. Because sometimes the mind does not replay pain because it wants to hurt you. Sometimes it replays pain because something inside the pain has not yet been understood. The memory keeps returning, not always as punishment, but as an unfinished message knocking on the door of your awareness. There is a painful question many tired people ask at night. Why do I keep thinking about this? You know the event is over. You know the person may be gone. You know the choice has already been made. You know the season cannot return. Yet the mind keeps bringing it back. The same scene, the same feeling, the same sentence, the same ache in the chest. And because it keeps returning, you may start to believe you are weak, stuck, or unable to move forward. But the mind often repeats what the soul has not yet understood. Pain does not always leave the moment it ends. Sometimes it stays because it is carrying a lesson you have not yet been able to name. It may be trying to show you where you abandoned yourself, where you ignored a quiet warning, where you confused attachment with love, where you accepted too little because you feared having nothing, where you spoke against your own truth, where you made peace with discomfort because conflict frightened you, where you gave your energy to people who could receive it but could not honor it. This is not to blame you. This is to wake you gently. The Stoic mind does not ask, "How do I erase this pain quickly?" It asks, "What is this pain trying to teach me about how to live with more wisdom?" That question changes the whole relationship with memory. The pain is no longer only an enemy. It becomes a messenger, not a master, not a judge, not a prison, a messenger. But a messenger will keep returning if the message is never received. Think of the moments that replay the most. They often carry a pattern. Maybe the mind keeps returning to a betrayal because it is trying to teach you discernment. Maybe it keeps returning to a failure because it is trying to teach preparation, humility, or courage. Maybe it keeps returning to a relationship because it is trying to teach boundaries. Maybe it keeps returning to a silence because it is trying to teach you the cost of not speaking when your spirit already knew the truth. Pain becomes heavier when you only ask, "Why did this happen to me?" That question may be human, but it can keep the mind circling. A stronger question is, what part of me is this pain asking me to recover? Because many wounds do not only take peace, they also reveal where peace was already fragile. They reveal where your life needs a wiser structure. They reveal where your values were being ignored. They reveal where you were living from fear instead of truth. This is not easy to face. Sometimes it is less painful to replay the wound than to receive the lesson. Because the lesson may require change. It may ask you to stop chasing certain people. It may ask you to stop giving without boundaries. It may ask you to admit that the place you kept returning to was not safe for your spirit. It may ask you to stop calling self-neglect love. It may ask you to become more honest, more disciplined, more patient, or more brave. And this is why the mind sometimes keeps replaying pain. It is waiting for you to stop only feeling it and start understanding it. The Stoics believed that what happens to us is not always in our control, but the meaning we build from it must be handled with care. If pain teaches you bitterness, it has taken more than the event itself. If pain teaches you fear of life, it has spread beyond its rightful place. If pain teaches you to close your heart forever, then the wound has become a ruler. But if pain teaches you wisdom, patience, boundaries, courage, and self-command, then even what hurt you can become part of your freedom. That does not mean the pain was good. It means the lesson can be useful. There is a difference. You do not need to call a painful season beautiful before you learn from it. You do not need to pretend betrayal was a blessing. You do not need to say loss was easy. You do not need to decorate the wound with false positivity. Stoic wisdom is not about forcing yourself to smile at what broke your peace. It is about refusing to let the pain remain meaningless inside you. Meaning does not remove the scar, but it gives the scar a place in your growth. At night, when the mind replays pain, pause before you follow the whole memory again. Ask gently, what lesson have I not yet taken from this? Not with pressure, not with anger, not as if you must solve your whole life before sleeping. Ask as a quiet observer. Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe the pain is teaching you to trust actions more than promises. Maybe it is teaching you not to abandon your own needs for the comfort of others. Maybe it is teaching you that peace is worth protecting earlier. Maybe it is teaching you that you must stop waiting for people to become who they have shown you they are not ready to be. Once the lesson becomes clear, the mind often becomes less desperate to repeat the pain. It no longer needs to play the same scene to get your attention. It has been heard. But if you keep avoiding the lesson, the memory may keep returning in different forms. Different people, same wound. Different situation, same fear. Different season, same pattern. This is why some pain feels familiar, even when the faces change. The lesson has not yet become a new way of living, and until the lesson becomes action, the mind may keep reminding you. Because wisdom is not only what you understand, wisdom is what you practice. If pain taught you to set boundaries, then the healing begins when you set them. If pain taught you to speak honestly, then the healing begins when you stop hiding your truth. If pain taught you to slow down before trusting, then the healing begins when you stop rushing past your own discernment. If pain taught you that you cannot save people from themselves, then the healing begins when you release the role of rescuer. The replay becomes quieter when the lesson becomes embodied. This means you must not only think differently, you must live differently. The mind trusts changed behavior more than comforting words. You can tell yourself, "I learned," but if you keep walking back into the same fire, the pain will keep warning you. You can say, "I understand," but if you keep ignoring your values, the memory will keep returning to remind you that understanding has not yet become protection. The Stoic life is practice, daily practice. You do not become free by having one deep thought. You become free by making the lesson visible in your choices. You learn patience by pausing. You learn courage by speaking. You learn boundaries by saying no. You learn self-respect by not negotiating with what destroys your peace. You learn acceptance by stopping the argument with what cannot be changed. And slowly the mind realizes, the lesson is being lived now. I no longer need to shout. This is when the replay begins to soften, not because the past disappears, not because the memory has no emotion, but because the pain has completed its work. There are also pains that replay because they have not been grieved properly. Sometimes the lesson is not an action. Sometimes the lesson is allowing yourself to admit that something hurt more than you wanted to say. You may have rushed into strength. You may have told everyone you were fine. You may have buried the sadness under responsibility. And now, at night, the pain returns, because it was never given the dignity of being felt. The Stoic does not run from emotion. The Stoic gives emotion a proper place. Not the throne, but a place. Grief must be felt without becoming a ruler. Sadness must be honored without becoming your identity. Hurt must be acknowledged without becoming your future. If the pain is asking to be grieved, then the lesson may be this: you do not heal by pretending it did not matter. Let the truth matter. Let the loss be named. Let the disappointment be real. Let the younger version of you be understood. Then, after it has been acknowledged, do not let it chain you to the floor. Tonight, when the old pain rises again, do not immediately say, "Why am I still like this?" That question carries judgment. Say instead, "What has not yet been understood? What value is this pain pointing me back to? What boundary, truth, grief, or wisdom is asking for my attention?" These questions do not trap you in the pain. They lead you through it. And if no clear answer comes tonight, do not force it. Sometimes the mind needs rest before it can understand. Sometimes the lesson unfolds slowly. Sometimes silence teaches what thinking cannot. You can say, "I am willing to learn, but I do not need to solve everything before sleep." That, too, is wisdom. Because the goal is not to turn night into another task. The goal is to stop turning pain into an endless loop without meaning. Let the memory come, but do not worship it. Let the pain speak, but do not make it your master. Let the lesson rise, but do not use it to accuse yourself. You are not here to suffer forever. You are here to become wiser, softer where softness is needed, stronger where strength is needed, clearer where confusion once ruled. The mind replays pain when it has not yet learned what the pain was teaching. But once the lesson is received, practiced, and honored, the pain no longer needs to knock so loudly. It can become quiet. It can become wisdom. It can become a scar that reminds you not of your defeat, but of the night you finally listened without letting the wound lead your life. So tonight, let the question be gentle, not, "Why am I still hurting?" but, "What is this hurt trying to return me to?" Maybe it is returning you to your values, maybe to your boundaries, maybe to your courage, maybe to your self-respect. maybe to the simple truth that you deserve to live without repeating what once broke your peace. And as this understanding settles, the replay begins to lose its urgency. The mind no longer needs to drag you through the same hallway again and again. The soul begins to feel heard. The body begins to soften. The night becomes less like a place of repetition and more like a place of release. You do not need to fear the memory. You only need to receive the wisdom without accepting the punishment. And once the lesson has been taken, you are allowed to let the pain rest too. And after the mind begins to understand why it replays old pain, another kind of freedom becomes available. Because the mind does not only return to yesterday, it also runs ahead into tomorrow. It takes problems that have not arrived, conversations that have not happened, outcomes that are not yet real, and rehearses them in the dark as if fear can prepare the soul for everything. But tonight was not given to you so you could live tomorrow twice. There is a deep weariness that comes from meeting tomorrow before tomorrow has even opened its eyes. You lie down to rest, but the mind begins to plan, predict, defend, solve, and prepare. It brings up the bills, the work, the call, the decision, the responsibility, the person you must face, the thing that could go wrong. And before you know it, your body is in bed, but your mind is already standing in the middle of tomorrow, exhausted by a day that has not yet begun. This is one of the hidden ways people lose their peace, not because tomorrow has harmed them, but because they have rehearsed tomorrow's harm in advance. They suffer over things that may never happen. They answer questions no one has asked. They carry conversations that may not occur. They prepare for rejection, failure, disappointment, delay, and disaster, as if worrying tonight will make them stronger in the morning. But worry does not always prepare you. Sometimes it drains the strength you will need when preparation truly matters. The Stoic mind learns the difference between preparation and rehearsal. Preparation is useful. It says, "What can I do now with wisdom?" Rehearsal is endless. It says, "Let me live every possible problem in my head until I feel safe." Preparation takes action and then stops. Rehearsal keeps thinking because it never trusts rest. Preparation belongs to the present. Rehearsal steals the night for a future that has not arrived. This difference matters deeply. If there is something practical you can do tonight, do it simply. Write the note. Set the reminder. Prepare what is needed. Make the small decision that is truly yours to make. But after that, the rest is not preparation anymore. It is fear wearing the clothes of responsibility. Many tired people do not realize this. They think they are being careful when they are actually being consumed. They think they are being serious when they are actually letting anxiety borrow their body. They think they are protecting the future when they are actually weakening the present. And the body listens. It hears the mind rehearsing danger and begins to respond as if the danger is already here. The breath becomes tight. The chest becomes heavy. The shoulders rise. The stomach turns. Sleep moves farther away. And now tomorrow has taken tonight, before it even came. The Stoics understood that the future is not fully ours. We may guide our actions toward it, but we cannot hold it still. We cannot command every event. We cannot control every person. We cannot prevent every difficulty by thinking about it long enough. A person can spend the whole night rehearsing a problem and still meet something different in the morning. This is why rehearsing tomorrow's problems tonight often becomes useless suffering. It gives pain before there is even proof that pain is needed. There is a sentence your mind may need to hear before sleep. I will meet tomorrow when tomorrow becomes today. That is not laziness. That is order. Because each day has its own duty. Tonight's duty is not to solve all of tomorrow. Tonight's duty is to restore the person who must meet tomorrow. If you enter the morning already drained by imaginary battles, you may have less patience, less clarity, less courage, and less wisdom for the real ones. But if you allow yourself to rest, tomorrow does not disappear. It simply meets a steadier version of you. This is the freedom that comes from no longer rehearsing tomorrow's problems tonight. You stop giving the future access to your sleep before it has earned your action. You stop living through pain before life has placed it in front of you. You stop treating every possibility as a responsibility. You stop confusing the mind's ability to picture danger with proof that danger is certain. The mind can create many scenes. That does not mean every scene deserves your belief. It can picture failure. It can picture embarrassment. It can picture loss. It can picture someone being angry. It can picture everything falling apart. But a picture in the mind is not fate. It is only a picture. And the Stoic practice is to look at that picture without bowing to it. To say, this may happen or it may not. If it happens, I will meet it with the strength I have then. But I will not spend tonight bleeding for a wound that has not appeared. This is not denial, it is discipline. Denial says, nothing bad can happen. Discipline says, many things can happen, but I will not suffer them before they come. Denial avoids reality. Discipline respects reality without becoming a servant of fear. Before sleep, the mind often asks for certainty. It wants to know exactly how tomorrow will go. It wants every answer before the sun rises. It wants every person to behave kindly. It wants every plan to work. It wants every risk removed. But life rarely gives such certainty. So if peace depends on certainty, peace will always be delayed. Stoic peace does not wait for certainty. It rests in readiness. Readiness is quieter than worry. It does not need to rehearse every possible storm. It simply says, whatever comes, I will try to meet it with wisdom. That is enough for tonight. You do not need to feel powerful over every outcome. You only need to stay connected to the part of you that can respond when the moment comes. Think of how many times you worried about something that never happened. How many conversations you rehearsed that went differently. How many disasters you prepared for that never arrived. How many nights you lost to a future that changed its mind by morning. The mind forgets this. It treats every fear as urgent because fear speaks loudly. But volume is not truth. Urgency is not accuracy. A thought can feel important simply because the nervous system is tired. This is why night thinking must be handled with care. A mind at midnight is not always a wise counselor. It is often tired, emotional, and searching for control. It may take a small concern and stretch it across your whole life. It may take one unknown and turn it into a disaster. It may take tomorrow's task and make it feel like the end of everything. Do not let a tired mind write the prophecy of your future. Instead, return to what is real now. Right now, tomorrow is not here. Right now, the problem is not in the room. Right now, the conversation is not happening. Right now, the decision may not need to be made. Right now, your body needs rest. Right now, your breath is the only thing asking for your attention. That is not small. That is freedom. Because freedom is often the ability to stay in the moment you are actually living, not the one you fear. Not the one you regret, not the one you keep preparing for in your head. The real moment, the present moment, the only place where your power truly exists. If tomorrow has a problem, tomorrow will also have a version of you who has slept, breathed, softened, and gathered strength. Do not send tonight's exhausted self into tomorrow's battlefield again and again. Let the future wait for the rested you. When the mind begins rehearsing, speak to it gently but firmly. Say, This is not happening now. Say, I have prepared what I can. Say, the rest belongs to morning. Say, I will not pay tonight for a problem that has not arrived. Say, tomorrow will receive my attention when it becomes my present. These words help draw a boundary, and boundaries are not only for people. Sometimes you must set a boundary with your own thoughts. You must tell the future, you may not enter my sleep without permission. You must tell fear, you may warn me once, but you may not rule the night. You must tell the mind, you may plan what is useful, but you may not rehearse every suffering. This is how you reclaim the night, not by forcing the mind into silence, but by giving it proper work. Its work tonight is not prediction. Its work tonight is release. Its work tonight is not solving all possible problems. Its work tonight is restoring inner strength. Its work tonight is not rehearsing tomorrow. Its work tonight is preparing the soul through rest. And when the mind understands this, sleep becomes less threatened. The body starts to feel safer. The heart no longer has to live in a day that has not come. The future returns to its proper place. Tomorrow becomes tomorrow again, not a shadow sitting on your chest at midnight. Tonight, you are allowed to stop practicing pain in advance. You are allowed to let unanswered things remain unanswered until morning. You are allowed to trust that rest is not neglect. You are allowed to believe that a problem can matter and still wait. You are allowed to close your eyes before every outcome is known, because the freedom you seek is not found in controlling tomorrow before it arrives. It is found in refusing to abandon tonight for a future that may unfold differently than fear says. Let tomorrow carry tomorrow. Let morning bring what morning brings. Let your mind come back from the rehearsal. Let your body return from the imagined battle. Let your breath remind you that this moment is enough. You do not have to live tomorrow tonight. You only have to rest deeply enough to meet it when it comes. And after you stop rehearsing tomorrow's problems tonight, the mind begins to notice something strange. Many fears that feel enormous in the dark lose their size when the morning arrives. What felt urgent at midnight often becomes clearer after rest. What felt like danger in the night may look like a task, a conversation, a choice, or a passing feeling once the light returns. There is a reason fear becomes louder at night. The world is quiet, the body is tired, the mind has fewer distractions. The heart has less strength to argue with every thought that enters. And in that quiet place, fear can dress itself like truth. It can walk into your mind with a serious voice and say, "This must be solved now." It can make tomorrow feel like a threat. It can make one problem feel like the whole future. It can make one uncertainty feel like a disaster already happening. But fear at night is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is only tiredness speaking in a loud voice. This is important to understand because many people believe their night thoughts are deeper than their day thoughts. They think because a fear arrives in silence, it must be important. They think because the emotion feels strong, the danger must be real. They think because the mind keeps repeating it, it must deserve attention. But a thought does not become true because it is loud. A fear does not become urgent because it arrives at midnight. A worry does not become wisdom simply because sleep has not come. The Stoic mind learns to test fear before obeying it. It does not say, "I feel afraid, so something terrible must be coming." It says, "Fear is here. Let me look at it clearly." This small pause changes everything, because fear often wants immediate obedience. It wants you to plan, react, defend, text, decide, search, replay, and solve right now. But Stoicism teaches that not every feeling deserves immediate action. Some feelings deserve observation, some deserve patience, some deserve rest before response. At night, Fear feels urgent because your inner strength is lower. The body has carried the day. The mind has processed too much. The emotions have been pushed down, lifted up, hidden, managed, and controlled. By the time night arrives, you may not be seeing life from your strongest self. You may be seeing it from your most exhausted self. And the exhausted self often turns shadows into mountains. This is why mourning matters. Mourning does not always remove the problem, but it gives you more light to see it, more energy to face it, more balance to understand it, more patience to respond. The same situation that felt impossible at night may look manageable after sleep. The same conversation that felt terrifying may look simple enough to prepare for. The same fear that felt like a warning may look like an old habit. The same problem that felt like the end may become one step, then another step, then another. Night fear compresses everything. Morning separates things. Night says, everything is wrong. Morning says, this part needs attention. Night says, you cannot handle this. Morning says, begin with what is yours. Night says, this will destroy you. Morning says, this is difficult, but not the whole story. This is why you must be careful about making decisions from the darkest part of your mind. A tired mind often wants final answers. It wants to close the case, judge the future, define your life, and make permanent conclusions while your body is asking for rest. But fear, spoken through exhaustion, is not a reliable prophet. It often exaggerates. It often removes hope. It often forgets your strength. It often remembers every danger and forgets every time you survived. The Stoics understood that impressions are not commands. An impression is the first thing the mind presents to you. This is terrible. You are unsafe. They will reject you. You will fail. Nothing will change. But the first impression is not the final truth. You are allowed to examine it. You are allowed to question it. You are allowed to say, this appears frightening, but I do not yet know that it is as dangerous as it feels. That sentence creates space between you and fear. And space is where freedom begins. Without space, fear becomes your ruler. It enters the mind, and you follow. It says panic, and you panic. It says rehearse, and you rehearse. It says stay awake, and you stay awake. It says the future is dangerous, and you believe it without trial. But when you create space, fear becomes something you can observe. It may still be present, but it no longer controls the whole room. At night, try not to ask fear to give you the full truth. Fear is not built to give the full truth. Fear is built to notice danger. It can be useful when danger is real, but it becomes harmful when it begins treating every unknown as an enemy. A wise mind does not hate fear. It simply puts fear in its proper place. Fear may knock. Fear may warn. Fear may ask for attention. But fear does not get to sit on the throne. The throne belongs to wisdom. And wisdom often says, rest first. This does not mean ignoring real responsibilities. If something needs immediate action, act. If there is a true emergency, respond. But many fears that visit at night are not emergencies. They are unfinished thoughts dressed in urgency. They are tomorrow's concerns arriving too early. They are old wounds trying to predict new pain. They are memories of past disappointment pretending to be knowledge of the future. The mind may say, this must be solved now. But ask gently, can anything truly be done at this hour? If the answer is yes, do the small useful thing. Write the reminder, prepare the item, make the note, set the alarm, take the simple step. But if the answer is no, then continuing to worry is no longer action. It is only suffering, and suffering before action often weakens action. A rested person can think more clearly. A rested person can speak more carefully. A rested person can choose with more dignity. A rested person can face fear without being swallowed by it. So when fear tells you that staying awake is responsible, answer it with Stoic clarity. My rest is part of my preparation. That is not avoidance, that is wisdom, because tomorrow's courage is being built in tonight's sleep. There is also another reason fear looks smaller in the morning. Morning reminds you that life continues. Night can make a problem feel like the only thing that exists. But morning brings movement. A sound outside, a cup of water, a small task, a new message, a different mood, a little light through the window. The world becomes wider again. And when the world becomes wider, fear loses some of its power. Fear thrives in narrow attention. When you stare at one worry long enough, it becomes the whole sky. But the morning opens the sky again. It shows you that the problem is part of life, not all of life. It may still matter, but it is no longer everything. It may still need care, but it is no longer sitting alone in the dark with your tired thoughts feeding it. This is why you must not trust every fear that grows in isolation. Fear grows bigger when it is alone with you at night. It shrinks when it is brought into light, reason, breath, and action. The Stoic practice before sleep is simple but powerful. Postpone judgment until strength returns. Not every problem needs a verdict tonight. Not every fear needs a decision tonight. Not every uncertainty needs to be solved while the body is tired. Sometimes the wisest thing you can say is, "I will look at this again in the morning." That sentence can save your peace. It tells the mind, you are not ignoring the issue. You are choosing the right time to meet it. It tells the body, there is no need to stay in alarm all night. It tells fear, you have been heard, but you will not control this hour. It tells the soul, rest is allowed before resolution. And when morning comes, you may find that the fear has changed shape. Maybe it is still there, but it is less sharp. Maybe it becomes a plan instead of panic. Maybe it becomes a conversation instead of a catastrophe. Maybe it becomes a boundary instead of a breakdown. Maybe it becomes one honest step instead of a whole imagined disaster. This is how freedom grows, not by never feeling fear, but by refusing to let fear choose the hour, the tone, and the truth. Tonight, if fear rises, do not rush to obey it. Let it speak, then let wisdom answer. Say, you feel urgent, but urgency is not always truth. Say, you are loud, but loudness is not proof. Say, you may be warning me, but I will meet this with a rested mind. Say, if this still matters in the morning, I will face it then. Let that be enough. You do not need to defeat fear tonight. You do not need to understand every shadow. You do not need to force your mind into perfect peace. You only need to stop letting midnight fear write tomorrow's story. Because fear often feels urgent at night, but looks smaller in the morning. Not because you were foolish for being afraid, but because rest returns proportion. Light returns perspective. Time returns balance. And wisdom returns the question fear forgot to ask, what is actually mine to do now? So let the night be night. Let morning carry morning. Let fear wait outside the door of sleep. And let your body receive what fear tried to steal from it. Rest. And after you learn that fear often feels bigger at night than it does in the morning, another softer wisdom becomes possible. Because many people do not stay awake because they are not tired. They stay awake because the mind has turned the night into a meeting room for the whole life. One thought enters, then another, until the soul is trying to solve years of pain, responsibility, fear, regret, purpose, love, money, family, future, and healing, all in one evening. There is a quiet kind of suffering that begins when the day ends, but the mind refuses to end with it. You lie down, hoping for rest. But the mind opens every file at once. It brings yesterday's regret, tomorrow's worry, last year's wound, next month's fear, the person you miss, the choice you must make, the work still unfinished, the life you thought you would have by now, and the question of whether you are becoming who you were meant to be. And suddenly, sleep is no longer sleep. It becomes an examination. It becomes a judgment. It becomes a place where you try to solve your entire existence before your eyes can close. But no human soul was built to repair a whole life in one night. This is one of the reasons the tired mind becomes so restless. It believes that because something matters, it must be solved now. It believes that because a question is serious, it deserves the final answer tonight. It believes that because life feels uncertain, it must search for certainty before sleep. But the night was not designed to carry the full weight of your whole story. It was designed to restore the person living inside that story. The Stoics understood the importance of limits, not only limits with people, not only limits with desire, but limits with thought. A mind without limits will turn reflection into exhaustion. It will take one concern and connect it to every other concern. It will begin with one simple question, what should I do tomorrow? And end with, what am I doing with my whole life? And once the mind reaches that place at night, peace becomes difficult because you are no longer dealing with one task. You are trying to judge your entire existence while tired. A tired mind should not be asked to carry questions that require a rested soul. Some questions are too large for midnight. Some decisions need daylight. Some emotions need time. Some wounds need slow healing. Some answers come through living, not through thinking harder in the dark. This is not avoidance. This is wisdom. Avoidance says, I will never face this. Wisdom says, I will face this at the right time, with the right strength. There is a difference. One runs from life. The other respects the body, the mind, and the hour. At night, you must learn to reduce the size of the assignment. The assignment is not, fix my entire life. The assignment is, return to this breath. The assignment is not, understand every wound. The assignment is, let the body soften. The assignment is not, control every outcome. The assignment is, release what cannot be held tonight. The assignment is not, become a perfect person before morning. The assignment is, rest as a human being who is still learning. That shift is powerful, because the mind often becomes heavy when it gives itself an impossible task, and solving an entire life in one evening is impossible. You cannot undo every mistake tonight. You cannot answer every question tonight. You cannot heal every wound tonight. You cannot make every person understand you tonight. You cannot predict every future outcome tonight. You cannot become fully free in one forced moment of thought. But you can take one burden out of your hands. You can let one fear wait. You can stop one argument. You can soften one place in the body. You can tell the mind, enough for tonight. And sometimes, that is where freedom begins. The Stoic path is built on what is within your power. And tonight, your power may be smaller than your fear wants to admit, but it is still real. You may not have power over the whole future, but you have power over this moment. You may not have power over every emotion, but you have power over how cruelly you speak to yourself. You may not have power over tomorrow's outcome, but you have power over whether you spend tonight rehearsing disaster. You may not have power over every answer, but you have power to stop demanding all of them before sleep. Life does not become lighter because every problem disappears. It becomes lighter when the mind learns how to carry only what belongs to the moment. And this moment is not asking for your whole life. It is asking for your presence. It is asking for one breath. It is asking for a little trust. It is asking you to believe that not every answer must arrive before rest is allowed. Many people feel guilty for resting while life is unfinished. They think, how can I sleep when there is still so much to fix? But life is always unfinished. There will always be something unresolved, something uncertain, something waiting, something healing, something changing. If you wait for your whole life to become complete before you rest, you will teach your body that rest must be earned by perfection. But rest is not a prize for having no problems. Rest is part of how you continue. Even warriors must sleep. Even wise people must pause. Even strong souls must stop carrying the whole road for one night. You do not become irresponsible by resting. You become more able to respond. A rested mind can see clearly. A rested heart can choose better. A rested body can carry tomorrow with more steadiness. But an exhausted mind, forced to solve everything at once, often creates more fear than wisdom. This is why the night must be protected. Not every thought deserves entrance. Not every worry deserves a meeting. Not every memory deserves a full conversation. Not every fear deserves a plan. Not every question deserves an answer before morning. You can create a gentle boundary with your own mind. You can say, tonight I will not solve my whole life. Tonight I will only return to myself. You can say, this question matters, but it does not belong to this hour. You can say, I will meet this with a clearer mind tomorrow. You can say, I am allowed to rest while still becoming. These words may feel simple, but they train the mind. They teach it that sleep is not the place where every problem must be settled. Sleep is the place where the self is restored enough to face life again. And sometimes the most stoic thing you can do is not think harder. Sometimes it is to stop pulling tomorrow into tonight, to stop asking tired thoughts for permanent answers, to stop turning silence into a life review, to stop demanding that every wound explain itself before the body can rest. There is humility in this. You admit, I cannot solve everything now. But there is also strength in it. You say, I will not destroy myself trying. That is self-command. That is inner order. That is the wisdom of knowing the difference between a real responsibility and an impossible demand. Tonight, let the big questions become smaller, not because they do not matter, but because you are meeting them at the doorway of sleep. Let the future become one breath. Let the past become one lesson. Let the pain become one softened place in the chest. Let the whole life become this single moment of release. You do not need to fix the whole road. You only need to stop walking it in your mind for tonight. You do not need to know how everything will unfold. You only need to trust that morning will meet you with more strength than midnight can offer. You do not need to become someone else before you sleep. You only need to stop punishing the person you are while you are still becoming. So when the mind begins opening every door, close them gently, not with force, not with panic, with calm authority, not tonight. When it brings a fear, say, tomorrow. When it brings an old wound, say, I have heard you. When it brings a question too large for this hour, say, this needs daylight. When it asks you to solve your entire life, say, my life is not a problem to finish tonight. It is a path I will continue after rest. And as that truth settles, the pressure begins to loosen. The mind stops trying to hold the whole sky. The body no longer has to prepare for every battle. The heart no longer has to answer for every season. The night becomes less like a test and more like a shelter. Because you were never meant to solve your entire life in one evening. You were meant to live it one day at a time, learn one lesson at a time, release one burden at a time, take one breath at a time. And tonight, that is enough. And after you stop trying to solve your entire life in one evening, the mind becomes ready for a finer kind of wisdom. Because many burdens stay heavy at night for one simple reason. You care deeply, but you do not know where care should end. You call it concern, but it has quietly become control. You call it love, but it has become pressure. You call it responsibility, but it has become the need to hold everything in your hands. There is a painful difference between being concerned about something and trying to control it. Concern says, "This matters to me." Control says, "This must happen the way I want, or I cannot rest." Concern allows the heart to care. Control makes the heart tighten. Concern can pray, prepare, support, speak, and act with wisdom. Control keeps reaching, forcing, checking, fearing, and rehearsing. Concern is human. Control becomes a cage, and many people do not notice when they cross from one into the other. You may begin with simple concern for someone you love. You want them to be okay. You want them to make better choices. You want them to see what you see. You want them to avoid pain. That concern is natural. It comes from care. But slowly, if you are not careful, concern becomes the belief that you must make them okay. You must make them change. You must make them listen. You must make them understand. You must stop them from choosing wrongly. And when they do not do what you hoped, your peace collapses as if their life is fully your responsibility. That is no longer concern. That is control wearing the face of love. The Stoics understood that peace depends on knowing what belongs to you and what does not. You can guide, but you cannot govern another person's soul. You can advise, but you cannot force wisdom into a heart that is not ready. You can love, but you cannot live for someone else. You can warn, but you cannot walk their path for them. You can be present, but you cannot become the author of their choices. This is hard to accept because control often feels like care. It feels serious. It feels responsible. It feels protective. The mind says, "If I stop worrying, I do not care." It says, "If I stop checking, something bad may happen." It says, "If I stop pushing, they may fail." But worry is not always love. Sometimes worry is fear trying to control what love cannot hold. Real concern has wisdom inside it. It asks, "What is mine to do?" Control asks, "How do I make this go my way?" Real concern respects limits. Control hates limits. Real concern can act and then release. Control acts and then keeps gripping. Real concern trusts that you can care without becoming consumed. Control believes that if you let go even a little, everything will fall apart. And this is why your peace depends on knowing the difference. Because if you confuse concern with control, you will never rest deeply. There will always be someone to fix, something to prevent, a future to manage, a reaction to predict, a result to force, a person to convince, a problem to hold in your chest. Your mind will keep saying, "Just one more thought, just one more plan, just one more check, just one more conversation." But control is never satisfied. It always asks for more. Concern can stop. Control cannot. Concern can say, "I have done what is mine for today." Control says, "What if that is not enough?" Concern can say, "I will meet the rest when it comes." Control says, "No, I must know now." Concern can say, "Their choice belongs to them." Control says, "But I need them to choose differently so I can feel safe." This is where the soul becomes tired, not because it has no love, but because it has taken love beyond its proper boundary. Love without wisdom becomes anxiety. Care without limits becomes self-abandonment. Responsibility without surrender becomes heaviness. And night after night, the body pays for what the mind refuses to release. The Stoic path does not tell you to stop caring. It teaches you to care cleanly, to care without possession, to care without panic, to care without turning every outcome into proof of your success or failure. This kind of care is stronger because it is steady. It does not collapse every time life moves differently than expected. It does not turn people into projects. It does not turn love into control. There are things you can do. Do them. Speak the truth where truth is needed. Prepare where preparation is wise. Apologize where you were wrong. Set boundaries where peace is being violated. Offer help where help is healthy. Take the next right step that belongs to your character. Then stop. That stopping is not neglect. It is discipline. Because after right action, control often wants to continue through worry. It says, "Now keep thinking." But once the action has been taken, worry does not add wisdom. It only drains strength. It makes the body carry what the hands have already done. It keeps the mind in a false labor, as if suffering over the outcome will make the outcome obey. But outcomes do not obey suffering. People do not become wise because you lose sleep. Tomorrow does not become safe because you feared it all night. The past does not become repaired because you keep holding it tightly. Life does not become fully controllable because your mind refuses to rest. This is why Stoicism gives the tired mind a boundary. It says, "Do what is yours, release what is not." Simple words, but difficult practice, because release can feel like danger at first. If you have spent years controlling to feel safe, peace may feel strange. Letting go may feel irresponsible. Rest may feel like you are leaving your post. But sometimes what you call your post is only the prison fear built around your heart. Tonight, ask yourself gently, am I concerned or am I trying to control? If it is concern, let it guide one clear action. If it is control, let it soften. If it is concern, it will respect your need for rest. If it is control, it will demand your whole night. If it is concern, it will keep you connected to love. If it is control, it will keep you connected to fear. You can care about your future without trying to control every detail of it. You can care about your family without carrying every choice they make. You can care about your work without letting it own your sleep. You can care about your healing without forcing yourself to be fully healed tonight. You can care about your life without trying to hold the whole life at once. This is balance. This is inner order. This is the quiet strength of the Stoic mind. Before sleep, let concern become simple. Let it become a small flame, not a wildfire. Let it warm your heart without burning your peace. Say, "I care, but I do not control." Say, "I will act where I can, and I will release where I must." Say, "My love does not require my exhaustion." Say, "My responsibility does not require endless fear." Say, "I can be faithful to what matters without carrying what is outside my power." These words return you to yourself, because control pulls your spirit outward, into other people, into tomorrow, into outcomes, into reactions, into imagined dangers. Concern, when guided by wisdom, brings you back inward. It asks, what kind of person will I be in this? That is where your true power lives, not in forcing the world, but in governing yourself. Peace does not come from having nothing to care about. Peace comes from caring without surrendering your whole inner life to what you care about. It comes from knowing that you can love deeply and still sleep. You can be responsible and still breathe. You can have serious matters in your life and still let the night do its healing work. Tonight, let control loosen its grip. Let the people you love belong to their own path. Let tomorrow belong to morning. Let outcomes belong to time. Let what you cannot force return to life. Let your own soul return to rest. Because your peace depends on knowing the difference between concern and control. Concern may sit gently beside you, but control must not be allowed to sleep in your chest. Let concern guide you with wisdom. Let control leave with the night. And as your body softens, remember this simple truth. You do not have to stop caring to be free. You only have to stop trying to control what care was never meant to carry. And now, as this long night begins to soften around you, remember what this journey has been teaching you. The heaviness you carried was not always responsibility. Sometimes it was judgment. Sometimes it was fear. Sometimes it was regret, asking for a life that no longer exists. Sometimes it was another person's choices sitting inside your heart as if they were proof that you failed. But tonight, you have been learning a quieter truth. Not everything that hurts you has the right to hold you. You do not need to turn your pillow into a courtroom. You do not need to rehearse tomorrow's problems before tomorrow arrives. You do not need to keep defending yourself in conversations that ended long ago. You do not need to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You do not need to punish yourself for pain that only needed compassion, wisdom, and time. The Stoic path is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming free. Free from thoughts that pretend to be masters. Free from burdens that were never yours. Free from the need to control what life, time, and other people must carry for themselves. Free to rest before everything is solved. Free to accept what happened without approving of it. Free to let the lesson remain while the suffering begins to leave. So tonight, let the past return to the past. Let tomorrow wait for morning. Let other people carry their own choices. Let your body stop defending old wounds. Let your mind stop asking tired questions for permanent answers. You have carried enough. You have fought enough. You have stayed strong long enough. Now strength can become stillness. Stillness can become peace. And peace can become the doorway into sleep. Fall asleep heavy if you must, but do not wake up chained to the same weight. Let this night take what your soul is ready to release. Let your breathing become softer. Let your heart become lighter. Let the quiet remind you that you are still here, still learning, still becoming, and still allowed to begin again. If this message reached a place inside you that has been tired for too long, leave a comment with the words, "I release the weight." Let those words be your small promise to yourself tonight. And if there is one burden you are finally ready to put down, write it below in one simple sentence. Someone else may read your words and feel less alone. And if you want more calm Stoic sleep meditations like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Let this space become part of your nightly return to peace. Sleep gently now. The night does not need you to carry everything. Wake up free.